Well, hello there. Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn as Simba's Twin, the Lion King, Part 11. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
First POV. Southern Serengeti. Boom. We exploded out. Dirt and greens were thrown flying everywhere due to the sheer force that burst out. The lion was hanging on for dear life to not be ragdolled over the ridge, but I simply decided to tear away the whole earth with him. Another lion was permanently locked on my back, his jaw clamping down hard and tight. And I threw the three of us down the rocky hill. "You're crazy!" The lion on my back released his hold to scream at me. The lion I had in front of me, on the other hand, only screamed in pure terror as we began falling down the slopes. Another explosion resounded when we crashed on the slopes. Small trees were uprooted, and the ground was traumatized at every impact point. The weight of the three lions was too much for the wet soil. After crashing, we rolled down the slopes. We rolled until we had a final crash at the base of the kopje. By that point, a lonely silence prevailed where chaos once ruled. I was the first to get up and shake my dizzy head. My opponents, on the other hand, were not moving anymore. Air got knocked out of their lungs, silencing every sound for a moment as they gasped for air they couldn't breathe. I was pretty sure they wouldn't be standing up regardless. I adjusted our position with each fall and made them cushion my landing. They were no more than broken bags of flesh. "You should have run when you heard the warnings," I said while shaking off dirt and leaves from my body. After defeating the kings of this region and chasing out their pride, I led my own pride to the old kopje. But there, I found two other rogues. They wouldn't leave even when I roared, so it came down to a fight. They thought they could use the uneven terrain of the kopje against me. A bigger animal meant lower mobility, but that didn't work too well for them, as I did what a crazy person would do and threw us all off from the height of the kopje. I was not afraid of falling from heights. I had used the tactic of falling from height way back when I fought a leopard as a cub. They were not prepared for such a crazy plan. My pride quickly gathered around us as the seconds passed. They saw us all fall from the kopje, so they were a little worried. But they stopped and sighed in relief when they saw me standing over two groveling bodies. Their internal organs were ruined, and they were bleeding out rapidly. I did not have to do anything else but wait, and I saw them dying a few minutes later. That was so stupid. Nola came charging at me. When her body crashed on mine in a lion kind of embrace, I realized I was not completely unharmed either. "Please don't ever do that again." Z followed right behind her. "Yeah, I don't think I will do that again," I said and stretched my body. My muscles flexed and my bones popped here and there. I think I just dislocated my shoulder with that action. I turned towards the kopje after my body felt a little looser. Anyways, this will be our home from now on. Until I clean the land of the other pests, that is. The pride went up the hill one after the other while I watched them from the ground. The pride had grown in numbers, but the place was still enough to support us. It was a big kopje after all, only slightly smaller than the total pride rocks. It had its own little ponds and streams to drink from as well, including some shallow caves where the lions could rest when it rained. And it does rain a lot during the wet season. "How long do you think it will take you before you reclaim everything?" Esh asked before she climbed up. "I will do my duty quickly," I replied. "So a week?" she asked. "Less," I answered. I walked up the kopje along with her. The next day, by morning, I set out 2 hunting parties. Each party consisted of 7 lionesses, making them 14 hunters in total. The remaining lionesses were to stay in the kopje and look after the cubs. The lionesses that remained were mostly the older ones, like my mother, Sarabi, Nola's mother, Sarafina, and such. I also stayed back, finding no reason to go out hunting when I had 2 fights yesterday and with many other battles awaiting me. I told the hunting parties to drag back whatever they hunted down as well. This was done not only for convenience but also to give them some exercise. There were many of them, so they could work together to drag back the carcass, taking turns. I lay at the highest point of the kopje. The sun was shining down upon the vegetation still wet from the morning dew. Here, I nursed my wounds while I watched the hunting party disappear on the horizon. The injuries I had were mostly sustained from the fall. Contrary to thinking I was unharmed at the time, the next morning I felt like shit. I had some bruises on my body, and there were shallow bite wounds on my shoulder as well. I released a long yawn, my body relaxing instinctively as I recognized this place as home. After the long journey and the fights, it was good to finally rest again. I closed my eyes and basked under the glowing sun. It was not hot due to the wet atmosphere. It felt warm and peaceful as it should be. But after a long time of rest, the sound of flapping wings made me crack open my eyes. Grim landed right beside me. Finished helping them find prey? I asked. Yes. A herd of zebras and wildebeest, he answered. The buffalo are on the other side of the region, and I don't think the new members are ready to take down a giant just yet. What about the other lions that claimed the land in my absence? I asked. I think they realize you have returned. They are all changing their position and moving further away from the south, he said. I scoffed, as if that will help them. Indeed, quite a futile action. But it does delay the inevitable, he said. I closed my eyes and lay back down. I had heard what I wanted to hear. I allowed my mind to go blank for a moment as I only focused on the sensation of the cool ground, which contrasted with the warmth of the sun. But before I could drift into a nap, Grim spoke. But I found something interesting, my lord, he said. I cracked open one eye to look at him. The central land is controlled by 4 lion kings, he said. I rolled my eyes while closing them again. A bit more troublesome than most. The lions that form prides in the region were mostly ruled by 2 kings, so a 4-lion coalition was a bit much but nothing I couldn't handle. I'm afraid it's not that simple, he said. I paused my relaxed breathing. I slowly propped myself up from lying down and opened both eyes to stare at him deeply. Grim could be said to be someone who knew me the best and also the land. So I knew there was a reason why he said that. What do you mean, Grim? When I first saw them, they had a whole complete pride with them. It's not like the 2 or 3 lionesses that the other kings had. They are well established, with a pride that surpassed 20 members, he said. I thought that was weird, so I did some digging. I talked to the few vultures that remained in the Serengeti and found out that these lions were not new kings. They came from the Masai Mara, and they were already kings when they set foot in the Serengeti, he said. They are not fraud kings, a product of your absence, but genuine kings, Grim said grimly. I stayed silent for a beat as I processed his words. But there was something I did not quite understand. If they are the kings of the Masai Mara, then why did they come here? I asked. The Serengeti and the Masai Mara have interchanging seasons. When it's dry in the Serengeti, it is wet in the Masai Mara. That is why the prey migrate between these 2 regions. And since the dry season was ending in the Serengeti, the herds returned with the rain too. And these kings. They came and followed the herd, I completed his sentence, and then a deep frown hung on my face. They are smart, I said. Had I not had the capacity to hunt giants, that would be my strategy too. This meant that the foreign kings were almost as sharp as me. At the very least, they were far more intelligent than the other lions. They call themselves the 4 Musketeers, and although I do not doubt your ability to defeat them, I would advise you to be careful, he said. How big are they? I asked again. Not monsters like you, but they are big. They are also far more capable than the other kings. The only reason why they do not rule the whole of the Serengeti is because of negligence, he said. I hummed, thinking about that a bit more. Thank you for the information, Grim. The pleasure is all mine, Grim said with a small bow. I shifted my eyes from him and stared into the horizon once more. This time, my mind was not blank but deep in thought. A low growl slowly escaped on instinct as I thought about these foreign kings. I was trying to take a few days of rest before I went after the other kings, but I decided to work even faster. My blood was boiling. We'll set out tonight, I told him. Already? Grim asked, a little hesitant. I can't rest easy while these lions roam my land as kings, I answered. And for the moment, I decided to lie back down and close my eyes. Because tonight, I was going to clean up my territory. Third POV, Southern Serengeti, it was night. The Serengeti slept under a shroud of clouds. The moon was buried behind the clouds, casting no light upon the land. The only sound was the wind weaving through the grass and the rhythmic croak of distant frogs and crickets. The air was wet and heavy, making every scent linger too long, and every movement sounded too close. The Western Pride had made camp beneath a cluster of trees near a dried riverbed. They had moved away from their previous home due to the so-called return of Leo. There were 7 lions in total, 5 females and 2 males, the kings of the West. Their names didn't matter anymore. The 2 males lay side by side, the larger of them half awake, his ears flicking back and forth. The night was still young, but the lack of moonlight made it feel like midnight. He did not know the exact reason, but he was very cautious that night. He lifted his head, nostrils twitching. He smelled nothing, but he felt something. It was one of those moments where instincts fought with senses. Was it just his imagination? Or was there something out there that he couldn't quite smell? He turned toward the sleeping pride and growled low, not loud enough to wake them but enough to alert the other male. "What is it?" the second king mumbled, barely raising his head. The first king didn't answer. He got up, stepping through the tall grass with his body low. The blades brushed against his belly, cool and wet. His eyes scanned the open field beyond the trees. Still nothing. Only the whisper of the grass. He was about to turn back when a faint sound reached his ears. It was not from ahead but from behind. A step. He turned sharply but saw nothing. The pride still slept under the acacia shade, the other male now sitting upright and looking around. The first king walked back, irritation mixing with unease. "It's nothing," he muttered. "Go back to sleep." But even as he said it, his tail wouldn't stop flicking. He went back to his same position and tried to lie back down to sleep. But just as he was about to relax, the wind changed direction. Both kings froze. The new wind carried a smell they couldn't mistake. The stench was old blood and dominance, heavier and thicker than anything they'd ever known. The smell unlocked something in their brain, a memory they thought they buried underneath a pile of ego and arrogance. It was like a trigger to a trauma they didn't want to remember. Before they could react, a shape passed between the trees. There was no roar, no growl, no challenge, no nothing. There was only the faint crunch of grass under tremendous weight. It was then that they realized they were not challenged but hunted. The thing hunting them did not even acknowledge them enough to challenge them as equal lions. The 2 kings stood shoulder to shoulder and looked where they saw the shape. Their eyes glowed slightly in the dark, inbuilt night vision almost making things as clear as day. But still, they found nothing. The night swallowed everything again. It was quite terrifying how they couldn't find such a giant beast. Then a sound came from the right. It was alarming how the sound shifted there so quickly. It was just a rustle, but both heads turned immediately. The grass moved slightly, like something crawling low. They both stepped forward, teeth bared. "Come out. We see you," one of the kings said with an angry snarl. But soon, the only sound came from them. The night was still again. At this point, the kings were irritated and decided to take the initiative by marching forward. Their approach caused another sound. This time they heard it clearer. It sounded like the flap of wings and something flying away. Heh. That was when a blur of motion shot from the left. A massive shape crashed into the smaller king, slamming him into the dirt with bone-cracking force. The other barely saw what hit him. One moment, there was silence. The next, his companion was gone beneath a wave of muscle and claws. He took a shocked step back while trying to see what had just happened. His smaller companion had completely disappeared, blanketed by a lion with a bigger back, bigger head, bigger paws, and bigger everything. His brother did not look small in comparison. He was not visible at all, swallowed by a mass of muscle. Then lightning crossed the clouds. It was a brief moment where everything was lit up bright, and he was finally able to see just what had happened. He caught only a glimpse as lightning flickered far away in the clouds, a silhouette above the grounded lion, his manner fully dark and heavy, his teeth buried deep in his brother's throat. He could almost feel the sheer bite force as the smaller lion's neck literally collapsed and was almost broken in chunks. The manner offers no protection. The loose skin may resist cuts, but it could not hold under sheer pressure. The downed lion twitched once, legs kicking weakly. Then nothing. He was killed just like that. Just like how lions would kill small helpless prey. The second lion had not moved at all. Everything happened too fast. His mind could not even comprehend that his brother was already dead. The killer stood up and raised his head. Lightning flashed again, faint but clear enough. That was when the lion caught himself looking up. His head was raised like he was looking at the sky because the killer had completely towered over him. King Leo. The lion named the killer with a shaky breath. He took a step back, almost stumbling as he did so. He wanted to roar, but his throat locked up. The instinct buried in every wild creature screamed, "Run." But anger and pride silenced the scream. "You have no right," he began, but his words would remain forever unsaid. Leo's paw came down on his head, the paw literally as big as his skull. The weight behind it sent his head into the mud, his front legs folding under the strength. The lion was knocked unconscious immediately, and when his eyes opened and he regained consciousness, he felt a tight clamp on his spine. He felt his body getting wet and liquid flowing down. It had not rained yet, so it was easy to tell that it was his blood. And then he was lifted off the ground completely. He never felt so helpless since his mother carried him. A violent thrash caused a crack in his spine, snapping one of the most important bones in his body. Then he was smashed into the ground. The earth was wet, damp, and muddy, so he did not die instantly. So he had to experience the same pain a couple of times until his body tore in half. Then he was dead, intestines spilling out, but not from the belly but the back. Leo stepped off the corpse, his face half bloated with fur and flesh stuck in his teeth and jaw. He looked toward the lionesses. His gaze alone was enough to freeze them. He didn't growl, didn't roar. He simply stood over their fallen kings, his chest rising and falling steadily. They lowered their heads one by one. Leo turned away and disappeared into the tall grass once more, his dark manner swallowed by the night. His work was not yet done. Eastern Serengeti, same night. The night was darker now. The clouds had thickened, burying the moon deeper under their weight. Not even the stars were able to shine. The Eastern Pride lay stretched out beneath a weathered kopje. It was a pride with 6 members, 5 females, and 1 king. The air was heavy and wet, the smell of recent rain still clinging to the grass. The lionesses slept in a loose circle, their flanks rising and falling with slow, steady rhythm. Only the king was awake. He stood on a small mound of rocks and earth, staring out at the dark plains below. His manner swayed in the wind. He was one of the oldest lions among those that reigned. His face had scars of experience. He had ruled this land for 2 months now, long enough to call it his. He had fought many battles for this, harder battles than most. It was why he was the only ruler of this land, while the other regions had a coalition of kings. Yet none of that eased the restlessness inside him. The courage he had to fight all those battles was nowhere to be found in his heart now, as if he had used it all up. He turned his nose to the wind, waiting for something, and he simply closed his eyes when it arrived. The scent came faintly at first, distant, distorted by the damp air, but it was unmistakable. Lions could tell stories through smell, and this smell talked of death. It was the smell of a lion, but on his body, he carried the smell of other lions and blood. His stomach twisted as his paws went still. The wind carried that scent again, stronger this time, until he could almost taste it on his tongue. He knew it. He knew it better than any smell in the world. He had fought it before. The night was gone from his mind. He was back to that old battlefield, a dry savanna under blistering sun. For lions had stood beside him then, his brothers in all but blood. They had fought as one coalition, 5 strong, confident and cruel. And in front of them was a tailless lion bigger than any lion should be, with a manner so thick and dark, you could almost lower your head on sight. The memory rose sharply and vividly. The roar that didn't sound like a roar, the charge that cracked the ground, the way the enemy fought them like it was nothing. It hadn't been a fight, really. That was something they all learned at one point. He still remembered the sound of his brother's bones breaking, the smell of their blood spraying onto the dry grass. The silence after the last one fell. They thought they had a chance since it was the dry season. They were gravely mistaken. He had run. He hadn't thought. He hadn't looked back. He had run for 2 nights and 2 days until his lungs bled and his paws tore. And now that same smell stood in his nose again. The king's chest heaved. The air suddenly felt too thick to breathe. He looked down at his pride sleeping peacefully, unaware of what was coming. He turned his head back to the plains. The darkness stretched endlessly, but he knew what was out there. So the king jumped down from the rock and padded toward the lionesses. When he reached them, he nudged one lioness softly. She was his favorite, the queen so to speak. "Up," he growled. She blinked sleep from her eyes. "What is it?" "Get up. Wake the others." Confusion flickered across her face, but she obeyed. Within moments, the others stirred, blinking and stretching. "What's wrong?" one asked. The king didn't answer immediately. He looked over them, his pride, his family, the only proof that his years of fighting had meant something. He had protected them and fought battles for them. His eyes flickered back to that same lioness. Her belly was beginning to swell. He exhaled deeply, feeling shame come up as he said, "You must leave." The lionesses blinked, confused. "Leave? Why?" "Go to the north," he said. "Past the marshes. Keep walking until morning. Don't stop." "King," one of them asked, "what are you saying?" "You have no king," he said firmly. "I am no king." "Go." "Leave," he screamed when they were still stuck. The lionesses obeyed him one by one. They did not know what was going on, but they decided to do as he said. "Go find someone else to protect you. Someone braver, or stupider," were his final words. He watched them disappear into the tree lines and the tall grass. When they were finally gone, he turned around just in time to see the lion standing tall beyond the grass. He froze, and then promptly bowed. He was no king. At least not in front of something like that. "Are you not the king of the eastern region?" Leo asked. "There are no kings in the eastern region," he answered. "Then what are you?" Leo asked. "Just a lion in a place where he shouldn't be," he said. "Then run. Go back to where you belong," Leo said. The lion did not need to be told twice as he ran in the opposite direction where his pride went. Third POV. The Congo, 3 years ago. "What's wrong, kid?" Timon asked with a worried tone at the lion cub they had adopted. Simba was lying in the forest, his ribs pressing against his skin with every breath he took. He had grown weak and thin. He had recovered quite a bit since they found him in that desert a week ago, but he was not getting better. "I don't know. I'm just extremely tired," Simba answered with a tired voice. "Could you maybe let me sleep in a bit today?" "Sure, kid. Take however long you need," Timon said, softly patting the lion cub, which he had come to be fond of over the week. Timon walked away to give space to Simba under the shade of a tree. He walked towards Pumba, who was looking at Simba from a distance. His eyes had the same worry, if not more. "What are we going to do, Timon? We can't let the kid die like this. We promised to take care of him," Pumba said as Timon came up to him with droopy shoulders. "I don't know. What do you want me to do?" "I am not his mother," he said with a sigh. Silence prevailed as the two watched Simba from a distance. His breathing was getting weaker and slower. It felt like they were watching him die in real time, and it was heartbreaking for the two friends. A week. They'd had the lion cub with them for a week, but they had quickly come to care for him. They thought they could change him in their image, but that seemed to be impossible. "You know what we have to do," Pumba said suddenly, his voice surprisingly firm contrary to his goofy character. "A lion cannot live off worms and insects." "No, I don't know what we have to do. Tell me, Pumba. Do you have any bright ideas?" he asked. "We need to give him meat." "Are you insane?" Timon said immediately. "Do you even realize what you're saying? Meat? Meat? Do you realize meat comes from living beings? Heck, you are meat. I'm sure you'd make for a delicious fatty steak, so why don't you offer yourself to him then?" "No, I mean other meat. Not us obviously. What if we give Simba the meat of someone no one loves? Someone who is hated by everyone?" Pumba said. "Okay, now you're just making it sad," he said. "So who do you suggest we feed Simba?" Pumba was silent for a while and stared intently at Timon. "Bushmaster," Pumba said. Timon's eyes widened. Then he released an "Oh." "I see the vision," Timon said. "We'll teach Simba to only eat the bad animals, not the good guys. That way we get rid of all the bullies, and Simba gets his meat." Pumba said, "No, wait. I have a better idea," Timon said before he hopped in front of Pumba and grabbed his face. "What if we let Simba eat only the bad guys while teaching him not to hurt the good guys? That way we get rid of the bullies of the forest, and Simba will have his meat and be healthy." That's what I just said. It's genius, Pumba. I am a genius," Timon said, ignoring him completely. "I don't know how I even come up with such great ideas. I may be small, but I guess I have quite the large brain." "Hey, Simba! Simba!" Timon called to the cub lying down in the distance. With an annoyed growl and droopy ears, Simba propped himself up. "Let's go. We are going to hunt meat for you," Timon said with an excited wave, and this time, Simba's ears perked up and it was like life was returning to him. He knew his new friends didn't allow him to hunt any living beings. That was why he had held back all this time. But he was extremely happy and excited to see the change in their minds. "Okay, I'm coming," Simba said and ran towards them. The lion's body had made itself weak to conserve energy, but when the brain knew he was going to hunt, the body suddenly allowed Simba to access all his energy reserves. The trio then headed towards the stream immediately. They traversed through the thick jungle. Simba was having trouble doing so, but Pumba was patient and taught the prey how to move in the forest. After an hour or so, they reached the stream. And there, they found the prey they were looking for. Bushmaster. He was a bay diker. They were not large prey, averaging around 20 to 26 kilograms. He was the perfect prey for the 8-month-old Simba, who weighed almost twice that. The Bushmaster was hated by all the animals in the vicinity. "Why though?" Simba asked. The three of them were hiding behind a bush while the Bushmaster was playing around in the small stream. "He looks kinda adorable," Simba said. Timon gave an answer. Bushmaster and his kind are extremely territorial, and for some reason, he's claimed ownership of the whole stream. The nearest watering hole after this is far, so other animals have to travel long distances just to get water. But he's so small. Can't Pumba chase him away? Simba asked. Yes, but he always comes back. He bullies the smaller animals, and when a bigger one comes, he does this really nasty thing to make sure no one drinks from his stream, Timon said. He pisses and shits in the stream, Pumba said with hate. Oh, you. Simba said. You don't know half of it, kid. The Bushmaster has greater firepower than even Pumba, Timon said. Simba made a face. He knew firsthand how horrible Pumba's fart smelled, so he couldn't even comprehend how horrible his must be. Stay here. We'll lure the Bushmaster to you, and you'll do your, lion thing, I guess, Timon said. Okay. Don't worry. I know how to hunt. Leo taught me, Simba said. After that, Pumba and Timon went out from their hiding spot. Hey, big ass. Timon called while standing on top of Pumba. Bushmaster looked towards them and frowned. You again. Timon? I told you, I don't allow others to drink from my stream. The moment he said that, he crouched down and dipped his rear into the flowing stream, threatening to piss, or worse, shit in the water immediately. No, 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 no. Don't do that. We come in peace. Timon said, raising his hands. I thought about our encounter last time and realized we were wrong. You're the owner of the stream. You should decide who drinks and who doesn't, he said. Bushmaster narrowed his eyes. What's your game, Timon? Absolutely nothing. I just want to make peace. And I even brought fruits for you. Not fallen ones, but fresh ones plucked right from the tree, Timon said. Bushmaster was incredibly suspicious. I don't smell anything. Obviously your nose has been wrecked by all the godly shits you've taken, Timon scoffed. I can't bring them to you because there are too many. And if Pumba carried them, he would have eaten them already because the fruits are that ripe and delicious. I put them behind that bush, Timon said, pointing at the bush where Simba hid. Although incredulous, the Bushmaster couldn't resist heading towards where Timon pointed. It never crossed his mind that they could be working together with a predator to take him down. And when Bushmaster came close to the bush, Simba leapt out. There were screams and howls of pain, but the rest was history. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Pumbaa asked, eyes wide as he looked at the gory scene of Simba eating the Bushmaster. Simba was starving and tearing away at the flesh like a savage. Blood didn't even flow as Simba quickly licked it clean. That was how hungry he was. "Who knows? I'm gonna puke," Timon said. "Yeah, me too." The two turned around and vomited in the other direction. But no matter. They had begun something they couldn't stop. They were raising an apex predator. But you would hear about them as heroes in the jungle, though, the trio who put away bad animals in the Congo. Congo, present day, Simba. Simba. Wake up. Pumbaa and Timon nudged at the giant apex predator they had raised since he was a cub. Hum. Simba slowly woke up from his sleep. It was early in the morning. So early, in fact, that it was still dark. There's trouble in the South Forest. The Red River hogs are on the move again. They're destroying the nests and have eaten all the eggs, Pumbaa said. How do you know this? It's the middle of the night, Simba asked groggily. Miss Chula came, Timon said, moving aside to show the guinea fowl that was right behind them. She was ragged, out of breath, and seemed to be mourning. Please, they've destroyed all my eggs, she said with a pleading voice. Simba could only get up with a yawn. He had fought a rock python that ate their friend only a few days ago, but trouble was already here. No land lacked villains in nature, after all. Okay, lead the way, Miss Chula, he said. And so, the story of Simba, the king and protector of the Congo, continued. First POV. I returned by morning. My body was definitely feeling under the weather, although the sun was promising a bright day. It had rained briefly at dawn, so the majority of the blood on my fur was gone. It was like I had never killed anyone in the first place. With my patrol last night, the south, west, and east regions of the Serengeti were finally mine again. Now the only regions occupied were the central Serengeti and the north. But I would put cleaning those at a later date, after I had recovered. The kings that occupied the central Serengeti especially sounded like a pain to deal with. The Four Musketeers, were they not? I would deal with them once I was fully healed. When I reached the kopje, I noticed the usual vehicle at the base of the mountain. The scent in the vehicle was familiar, so I headed there first before climbing back up. Good morning to you too, Leo. Ramirez greeted me with a camera held against his chest. In the jeep were three familiar individuals, Ramirez, Malik, and Hannah, the only woman. I yawned widely and peeked into their jeep. My height was enough to tower slightly over the vehicle even while standing on all fours. Hannah quickly opened a wrapped bar and threw it at me. I caught the snack and made a pleased growl. Protein bar. They were getting used to my food tax. You had a busy night. Hey? We heard about it from the other teams, Hannah said, to which I responded by standing sideways to the vehicle. She knew exactly what to do as she began checking my body for injuries. I climbed up the jeep with my forelegs, the vehicle creaking and tilting sideways under my weight. I allowed her to push away my manet and check my chest as well. No serious injury, only minor cuts and scratches, she said, talking to me as if I understood her. Although there are bruises on the shoulder. That should be due to my fall from the kopje the day before yesterday. Although I landed as safely as possible, it was impossible to escape such a fall unharmed. Wait, I have something for you, she said and rummaged through her bag. She took out a few pills and another protein bar. When she brought them near my mouth, I ate them both. What did you give him? Ramirez asked the question I had in my mind. Nothing much, since he's not gravely injured. Some anti-inflammatory pills to help with the wounds and painkillers, she replied simply while rubbing the side of my manet. She got some dried blood on her hands, but it seemed she didn't care. I leaned into her hand briefly as thanks before pulling back. It was truly convenient to have these humans nearby. Getting my pictures taken was a small exchange in my opinion. After the checkup, I climbed up the kopje. My pride was spread across the hills and had different locations where they slept instead of staying in one place together. You could see the different groups in my pride. The younger ones stayed together, and so did the older ones. And there was a place where the newcomers stayed. I passed them one by one in my climb to the peak. They bowed their heads, some coming up to me for their daily dose of affection. I had some of the younger females follow me up the kopje to keep me company. I lay at the very peak. It had a small cave and some trees to provide shade. It was the perfect place to rest, although small, and could only fit a couple of lions. After reaching there and finally resting with a few females, I roared into the morning sky. It was a simple reminder to this land of who was truly king. Central Serengeti. I won't lie, this is concerning, Scarface said while he and his brother looked at the group of females that came to their pride after losing their king. This makes it the third group to come, Hunter said from the side. They claim to be from the Eastern Pride. The two groups before claimed they were from the Southern Pride and the Western Pride. The old king is dispatching them so quickly. That's at least 4 lion kings defeated in the span of 2 days, Sikio added. They were standing in a line. Perhaps you are right, Scarface. This King Leo is not to be underestimated. The 4 musketeers had been the main kings. These broken prides sought for a new home. They had the biggest and most prosperous land, and they were also the closest since they were at the center. So they had been absorbing the rogue lionesses. Let's keep that aside for a moment. What are we going to do with these new females? Morani asked. Should we really take more lions in? We don't have other choices, do we? We can't just abandon them and let them roam alone, Scarface said. But our pride is nearing 30 members, he argued. And we are 4 kings. We can take them in, Scarface insisted. He turned and walked away after saying that. The lionesses in question breathed a sigh of relief when they heard they had a place here. Do you think the 3 of you can look after the pride for a while? There are too many variables missing. A king needs to be there to suppress conflict, Scarface said. Wait, where are you going? Hunter asked. The other lions also turned towards Scarface as they saw him walking away. I am going to the south. I need to see this Lion King, Scarface said firmly. What? You're going alone? Morani asked. No need to worry. I'm not going there to challenge him. I just want to see him and see if we can talk things out. If a battle is inevitable, then I'll come back and we'll prepare, he said. The other kings looked at each other. Scarface was always someone who did things in his own unique way. They had learned to trust his decisions. He was kind of the leader among equals, after all. Stay safe. That was all they could say as Scarface left the pride to meet Leo. Third POV, the kopje, Southern Serengeti. Leo rested at the very peak of the rocky hill. He had a few females with him whom he mated right then and there. But the other members of the pride simply stayed in their place, looking up at their king briefly from time to time. They studied his body language, his presence, and his character. Especially for those lionesses who had just joined the pride recently, Leo was still an absolute enigma. He was this invincible lion king who killed kings left and right, who could not be understood as simply as they had understood Scar. The sheer size of the pride worked against them this time. There were too many members, so close relationships were hard to form. There were groups inside the group, mainly separated into 3. The young female favorites like Nola, Tala, Zee, etc. The native prides who once belonged to the Mbali brothers, and Scar's old pride. One would think that since Leo was this powerful lion king, living under his rule must be as close as it could get to a paradise for the lionesses. But that was not the complete truth. Leo's pride had its own challenges. The lionesses found it hard to truly relate to the king. Although flaws were flaws, often they could help in forming a relationship. A lion pride should need each other, but that did not seem to be the case with Leo. He was like a completely different species to them sometimes. He had his odd way of doing things. Whatever they knew, whatever tradition they held, was thrown out of the window when it came to him. He also did not really need them. He could hunt on his own effortlessly. He could potentially feed the whole pride by himself if he wanted to. The only reason the lionesses hunted these days was because he was busy battling other lions and it was convenient for him. In such cases, the lionesses lacked the feeling of being needed. Leo was too competent, and he stripped them of their purpose. The only thing they could do was go into heat and try with all their might to nurture his seeds. Without contribution, a house could not feel like home. There was no commitment. That was the thing the Pride was struggling with, trying to find their purpose under the king, not just to be trophies to be flaunted around uselessly. The original members of the Pride were faring much better because they went to war for him, but for Scar's old Pride, it was even more jarring. Sarafina, the mother of Nola, was in deep conflict as she looked towards the king. Leo, a lion she had known since he was a cub, but now it was like she was looking at a completely different entity. "Are you scared of the king?" A voice suddenly came from behind her while she was deep in thought. She flinched back and turned to see that another lioness had sneaked up on her. It was the unspoken second leader of the Pride, Esh. "No," Sarafina answered. She paused at her own words to see the truth. "I just don't know how to feel." "Is it a common occurrence for the Serengeti to mourn her kings?" she asked. Esh frowned. "There are no kings in the Serengeti except Leo. Those were just titles they gave themselves in his short absence." "But if you're talking about lions in general, then yes," Esh said. "In the 1 year that I've been under him, I've witnessed the fall of hundreds of lions. More probably fell without anyone's knowledge. The king defeated his foes and less than completely erased them from the face of the earth. The vultures in the sky made sure no corpse lingered for more than an hour." Sarafina gulped. She took a look up the copy and briefly caught the face of the king. "Isn't that concerning? All that killing, I mean," she asked. "It does at first," Esh admitted after a pause, "until I realized he himself could not help it." Sarafina blinked at that statement, not at all understanding what she meant. "What do you mean?" "It's the curse of the strong," Esh said. "His own strength challenges the strong, and his dominance made him the enemy of all. In the end, he only kills the ones who come to kill, so I'm okay with that. It's funny, really. Lions were meant to be mighty. They were meant to be superior to lionesses. But he has destroyed that perspective completely," she said. "Other lions are nothing compared to him." Sarafina argued, "But why does he not avoid it? Why does he not avoid all the blood that could have remained on a body instead of on the ground? Why does he need all this territory? Couldn't he be content with one kingdom?" Esh frowned. "That is quite the judgment from someone who served a king evil enough to kill his own cubs." Sarafina crumbled instantly. There was shame on her face and disgrace on her shoulders. But to answer the question, asking that of him would be like asking a bird with wings not to fly or asking an antelope not to run. He can, and so he shall. "The world can change first before it changes him," she said. "You are not serving an evil king like you once did. Trust me, Leo is not some bloodthirsty lion that seeks out violence. I would go as far as to respect you as someone belonging to the Pride that raised him. You raised him well," Esh said, and then did a small bow that did not humiliate her but, at the same time, gave a compliment to another. "And before I forget the reason why I came here, I was supposed to tell you that you will be a part of the group that goes out hunting today," she said. "We are going to hunt?" "But we hunted yesterday. We had a full meal," Sarafina asked. "That is not how we do things here in Leo's Pride." Esh shook her head with an amused smile. "If you are going to be strong like us, the newcomers need to start eating like us." Sarafina did a double take at the lioness in front of her. In comparison to their frame, they were quite equal, but Esh was so much bigger than her. Her frame was filled with muscle and fat at the right places. "I understand," she said. "Okay then, best of luck on your hunt," Esh said. The king should have built up quite an appetite after his battle last night. With that said, Esh walked away from Sarafina to inform the other lions who would be hunting that day. Sometime later, the hunting party set out on the same morning. The party consisted of 7 lionesses in total. Most of them belonged to Scar's old Pride. They had been quite outcast ever since they joined, but now that they had reached home, it was finally time to let them participate in the Pride activities. This would also be a time to prove themselves. So, although no one said it out loud, the lions knew how important this hunt was. It was also their first time roaming around their new home, the Serengeti. Most of them were looking around curiously at the prosperous land they now lived in. The ground was damp and soft from last night's rain. When they stepped through the tall grass, Drops brushed their bellies and paws, leaving dark prints behind them. The wet season had painted everything green, and it was not the bright green of young shoots either, but a deep, living color that clung to the soil and trees. Mist still hovered above the lowlands. The smell of wet earth hung in the air, and there were puddles every few meters where flies buzzed and frogs and lizards stalked to eat them. Somewhere in the distance, an unseen jackal barked twice. The group stopped for a moment to listen, but then it quickly fell silent again. Perhaps that was a signal for the jackals to leave. The lionesses walked again in a loose line, their tails flicking lazily. They did not have to do the tracking, as a few vultures roamed the skies and guided them to their destination. For these reasons, the newcomers could observe the land that stretched endlessly in every direction. A young lioness named Dira glanced around as she walked. Her eyes followed the wavering horizon. "It goes on forever," she murmured to herself when they reached a distance where the Pride lands would have ended. Nydia, the leader of the group, responded, "We are not out of the southern region yet, but that alone should be as big as your old kingdom." Now they finally realized just how massive the Serengeti was and just how large a territory their king ruled. They continued onward. A light breeze passed through the grass, bending it in ripples. A few small birds, mostly larks, fluttered up, chattering as they rose into the grey-blue sky. Far ahead, a herd of Thompson's gazelles grazed near a cluster of acacias, their tan coats blending with the wet grass. Some lionesses paused. "Those are too small to feed the Pride. The vultures have better prey," Nydia said. Another lesson learned. Back in their home, they would have hunted any prey they could find. But the Serengeti was large enough for the lions to pick their preferred prey. They watched the steady movement of the herd for a moment before they continued onward. Hours passed like that. Quiet walking, quiet watching. When noon came, the clouds began to break, and light spilled over the land in wide, pale streaks. At that point, they finally found the prey they were looking for. On the curve of a distant river was a giant herd of zebras. There were also other animals there, like a group of ostriches running across the plains. But before they could move on to hunting, a scent caught their noses. It was the scent of a dominant male on one of the trees. "We are in the western part of the kingdom. Don't think much of the smell. The previous rulers of this land passed last night," Nydia said. Her words calmed their hearts but also made them heavy as they thought about their king, who had set out last night and returned in the morning with blood not his own. Nydia directed the hunt. And with so much prey to choose from, the hunting party was able to take down 2 full-grown zebras and 1 calf whose legs were broken in a stampede that followed the hunt. But the hunt was only a part of their job. The work was not done, as the group had to drag these carcasses all the way back to the kopje. That was going to be a long journey back, especially with the heavy zebras. That was the main point, though. Leo did not just want them to eat. He also wanted them to train. By taking turns, they began dragging home the animals they had caught. They followed Leo's advice of gutting the carcass first, taking off their heavy, bone-filled legs and their inedible insides to lighten the load. The Serengeti was also a plain, so it was not too much of a hurdle to drag the carcasses. It just took a lot of lion power to do so. Although they finished hunting at noon, they only returned to the kopje in the late afternoon when the sun was starting to set. The lionesses dropped the carcasses near the foot of the rocks, their jaws sore and paws aching from the long drag across the plains. For a long while, no one spoke. They simply stood there, catching their breath, their sides rising and falling in rhythm. The evening breeze carried cool air from the river, brushing through their fur and easing the heat trapped beneath it. Dira lay down first, rolling onto her side. Her muscles trembled with exhaustion, but her face carried the faintest smile. "It was hard work. But I don't know why I am so fulfilled," she said. Nydia gave a low hum in response as she sat down beside her. The older lioness's gaze went far, beyond the kopje, beyond the plains. From there, they could see the entire southern stretch of the Serengeti, grasslands glinting in the last light, the river like a thin silver scar cutting through it. Clouds hung in streaks above the horizon, painted orange and purple. The wind smelled faintly of their king, Leo, and the rest of the Pride. Somewhere far away, they heard the low call of a lion echo across the valley, deep and resonant. Leo had also just returned from a short afternoon patrol. "That would be him," Nydia said, just as everyone quickly got up to greet the king with straight posture. No need to be nervous. You all did a splendid job. I'm sure the king would be pleased with the kills. The rest of the Pride up the copy also came down to share the meal. Each member of the Pride gathered one by one around the carcasses. The curious and playful cubs bit at the hides of the zebras, but no one ate yet. They waited as Leo finally came to them. His presence brought a sense of order to the Pride immediately as everyone observed him. He did not heed anyone among the 30 or so members of the Pride. He made a beeline to the carcass. He smelled the zebras for a few moments before he began eating in their presence. He opened up the carcass with ease and ate the muscle and the organs. For that moment, the Pride just watched as their king ate. And after Leo finally had his fill, he picked up one carcass by the neck and brought it towards the hunting party. He dropped the heavy carcass with a thud. Only when it fell would you realize how heavy it was. The ease with which he carried that thing created the illusion of it being light as a feather. "You did well," Leo said. He looked at each member of the hunting party before he turned and left. But that small praise and his permission to let them eat second was everything to them. Now everything was worth it. With pride and a sense of fulfillment, the hunting party began eating. They were not hungry in the morning, but after all that activity, they were starving. The rest of the Pride followed suit. Third Pew. It had already been a day since Scarface left his brothers and his Pride to meet the king who had returned. Leo had been extremely active and aggressive ever since he returned. By his calculation, and taking into account when they first saw the horde of vultures returning to the skies of the Serengeti, it had not even been 4 days since Leo had returned. But in that short time period, Leo was able to take down 3 lion prides. That feat alone rang many alarms inside Scarface. It would seem his worst expectation about the old king, which he heard from the rumors, was true. The tailless lion, more monster than lion. The one who took over the Serengeti with his own strength, not with a coalition or help. The only beast that hunted the giant buffalo. All those sounded like exaggerated rumors spread by those whom he defeated to justify their loss and retain their dignity. That was what Scarface thought, at first. But taking down 3 lion prides in a few days also sounded just as unbelievable. But the proof was there. The broken prides came to him, and they told him what they saw. A lion that came and killed their kings under the shroud of darkness. Scarface asked them for more information about how the fight played out, how strong this Leo was, how their kings fared against him, and whether he truly was alone or not. The answer he got was that they didn't know. They didn't know. Multiple lionesses across 3 different prides had no clue what went down. At first, he thought they were lying. He pressed them harder for real answers, but their answer remained the same. They did not know, truly. But how did that happen? How did so many eyes miss something so important? The only possible answer was that there was never a fight in the first place. Leo had swiftly and effectively dismantled the kings in a way not worthy of being called a fight. That was concerning. That was really and truly concerning for Scarface. His brothers, blinded by ego and arrogance, may not see it, but he got it. Either Leo was extremely smart and cunning, or he was simply just that strong compared to the other lions. Either way, he posed a threat with his feats. But Scarface was leaning more into Leo being intelligent. The way he attacked during the night, the way he did not roar and pursue a traditional challenge, and the way he sneaked up on the Pride, all of it screamed dirty cunning. Scarface was not quick to put faith in assumptions, though he would see for himself soon. Because finally, he had reached the southern Serengeti. First POE. I yawned a wide yawn as my mind started feeling a bit sluggish due to waking up early to patrol and train. The warmth of my females was extremely inviting. If I were true to my desire, I would leap into their midst and roll around in their femininity before sleeping soundly with empty balls. But the first thing a king should be cautious of is not to be led by his desire, which was the textbook first step to downfall. Instead, I was lying near the small pond in the copy, looking at my reflection after curing my parched throat. I blew upward, causing my manner to dance up due to the flow of air. My vision was clear for a moment before it became surrounded by the hair again. I growled. My manner had grown thick enough to become a hassle. I was always walking with my chest out and head held high, so it was not obvious normally. But let's say in a fight or when I looked down, my dark manner came down and blocked my vision. Should I make the humans give me a haircut? I asked while blowing my manner up frequently. I was looking down at my own reflection. They would probably get the clue if I did this constantly, I said, blowing my hair up again. But for a moment, I stopped focusing on my overgrown manner and looked at myself. It had been only 4 years since I was reborn as a lion, so I could get that feeling where I looked at myself from a human perspective and freaked myself out at my own reflection. I would be honest to say I looked absolutely terrifying. There was the natural majestic image of a lion, but more than that, it looked quite horrifying. Especially when I bared my teeth. And those bastards were still brave enough to fight against me. That was the only thing I could respect in my opponents because, honestly, I would run from me. "Come here," Z said from my side. She held my head and kind of forcefully turned me to face her. She brought out her tongue, and she let drool flow on that pink, red flesh before she licked me on my head. I closed my eyes and enjoyed her prickly, soft tongue caressing my face and scalp. She stopped after a few minutes. I grumbled when she let go of my head because a little more and I would have fallen asleep like a baby. "See? All better," she said. I blinked and turned back to the pond. When I looked down, I noticed that my manner no longer came down, and I saw why in my reflection. She slicked back my manner, using her saliva as some kind of hair cream to keep it in place. "Thank you," I said, even though I knew it was a temporary solution. "You look good like that," Z said, giving me the cat eyes and the smile. She was looking more attractive day by day as she fattened up. Looking at it truly made you realize why anime girls had all their facial features based on cats and why women imitated felines for years, through making their eyes look cat-like or models walking like cats. But while that was good, it was also torture for me. When are you going to let me hit a woman? I am dying of thirst here. Although I was surrounded by other females, I wanted her. It was like being stranded in an ocean. Water everywhere, but you truly needed fresh water. I shook my head and looked around me, focusing on other things, anything except her. And that was when I noticed vultures flying in the sky. Now, I was not merely searching for distractions. My entire focus was on the birds in the sky. I stood up and walked away from the pond. I headed towards someplace more open and elevated. An intruder, I said, guessing what was happening from the behavior of the vultures. They had been following me for long enough that I could tell the situation just by their behavior. Not long after, a single vulture came down to me. It was Grim. "What's going on?" I asked, growls leaking out with words. If it were really another intruder, I'm going to crash out and kill it. I was hoping for a rest for at least a full day. I was getting tired of constant battles. "Is it another intruder?" I asked. "Yes, but this one is different. I don't think this intruder is looking for a fight. He ignored your scented marks, and he is not roaring." Grim answered. "And also, he is one of the 4 kings that ruled the central Serengeti," he said. "But strangely enough, he came alone." I paused, processing the news. "Are you sure his brothers are not there?" "Yes, my lord. After not finding them in his vicinity, I even flew back to the central Serengeti, and they were there, maintaining their pride territory," he said. "I see." I thought for a moment before deciding on the next course of action. Where is he going? Is he just passing by or? "He is heading straight towards the copy," Grim said. "Then lead me to him," I said before I climbed down the rocky hill. Grim took to the skies to guide me towards this intruder. Many possible scenarios played in my mind. What could this lion want? Perhaps he had been kicked out of the pride and was now seeking revenge on them by trying to team up with me. Or perhaps he wanted to challenge me. But Grim's observation of the intruder not wanting a fight really threw me for a loop. Now I was infinitely curious about what this lion wanted. Third POV. During the wet season in the Serengeti, it rained a lot. No shit, Sherlock. Am I right? That meant clouds were in the sky in huge bulbous chunks. Even when it was sunny, the sky of the Serengeti was filled with white clouds that covered most of the blue sky. They stayed like that, ready to rain upon the land anytime. But the sky was awfully and concerningly clear when they met. It was like the land itself was afraid to obstruct this important meeting that would decide its fate. Leo came from the south, guided by his faithful companion. Scarface came from the north with nothing but his mind and an unknown intention. They met when both escaped the tree lines and saw each other across an open plain. The plain was where a herd of buffalo had grazed a week ago, so there was barely any grass or vegetation yet. Leo and Scarface looked at each other from across the plains, and both lions were getting a déjà vu. After all, this was not the first time they had met. A year ago, both lions had gazed upon each other from both sides of the Mara River. So when they saw each other again, that memory came back like a flood to them. "Funny," Leo commented. "Hilarious," Scarface said to himself. Afterwards, they both approached each other. Their eyes were solely focused on each other as they walked, analyzing, recognizing, and finally remembering. But it was more so for Scarface. Leo did a quick glance over him before brushing it off easily. Scarface was a well-built lion, longer than most. He was also quite larger than other lions, but not by an absurd amount. He was smaller than Baraka, and compared to his current size, Baraka could be called tiny. He did not even need to think about whether he could kill the lion before him if it turned into a fight. He did not linger on how he could kill Scarface. The truth was, he could kill Scarface in any and every way. On the other side, Scarface was trying his hardest to suppress the absolute surprise and shock he had when he saw Leo. A lion with a gripping dark mane, so thick and massive that it made his head look like he could eat a lion whole with one bite. His shoulders and chest muscles were so massive that they found a way to pop out underneath that thick fur. His gait was awkward, like a lion that was not walking like a lion. He had no tail behind him, giving no tell of his emotion or intention to others. The lack of a tail made it almost impossible to relate to him as a fellow lion. Compared to human standards, it would be like a person with no face, a creature you could not humanize. It was not fear, but the lack of features alone gave a creepy kind of terror when observed. If Scarface could describe Leo with one word, it would be behemoth. The lion that walked as the enemy was almost twice as big as he was. But that was not enough to strike fear into Scarface. Leo could be triple his size, and there wouldn't be a single tremble in his steps. Do not mistake intelligence or caution for cowardice. Because as Leo walked, the lion that walked back was a lion that did not cower when faced with the biggest of beasts and had taken down larger creatures. It was a lion that had killed a hippo. Both stopped before they reached the other, deciding to put distance between them, around 8 meters or so. "King Leo," Scarface began and did a short bow. Wait, calling it a bow should be wrong because his head inclined no more than an inch. Leo did not show the same courtesy. Why should he when the other was trespassing? He simply looked at Scar with piercing eyes that were not a glare, but it felt like much more. "You know me, but I do not know you," Leo said. "I am Scarface, the first of 4 brothers, king of the Masai Mara and ruler of the Serengeti," he said. Leo's lips peeled back with a twitch. The only reason he did not burst out immediately was that Scarface referred to himself as ruler and not king of the Serengeti. There was a difference somehow. "I come not as a challenger but as a fellow king," Scarface said, insisting he was equal even though, from an outside perspective, he was clearly the lesser beast. "I have some things to discuss with you, specifically about what you are doing with the Serengeti upon your return," he said. "Who are you to question what I am doing inside my own kingdom?" Leo said, not returning the same calm as Scarface did. Leo insisted that they were not equals with that remark, causing Scarface to pinch up his face just a bit, revealing some white in his mouth. Nevertheless, Scarface continued, "The Serengeti is a large territory, much larger than even the Masai Mara, which we did not wholly occupy. I was hoping we could come to a mutual agreement regarding this land." Leo blinked and pulled back his head in wonder. His face loosened up, and there was simply no hostility on his face anymore. What Scarface just said seemed to affect him, and it affected him a lot. "What did you just say?" Leo asked. "Are you really implying what I think you are?" Taking that as a good sign, Scarface continued, "We could split the Serengeti between our prides. We only came to the Serengeti to avoid the harsh season of the Masai Mara, and we plan to return when it's over. If you can allow us to rule the land in the northern region near the Mara River, we would be content to move out of your kingdom. You would have the majority of the land. I only ask you to give us a small land where we could hunt when the dry season hits the Masai Mara." Leo just stared. I'm contemplating whether you are brave or audacious, he said. You want me to give you a part of my kingdom for nothing? Is that what you are negotiating? Not for nothing, it will be at the price of no conflict, Scarface replied sharply. And if you want more, we can arrange a piece of land for you back in the Masai Mara where you and your pride could hunt when the dry season falls on the Serengeti. Absolutely not, Leo said. Anger and aggression returned on his face tenfold. How dare you even suggest such a thing? Scarface pulled back, taking a single step back out of caution and also to load his legs, ready to explode at any moment. The tension rose quickly, and it was going to overflow or explode soon. I am being rational here. You have nothing to lose. Any lion pride is capable of thriving even in 1/4 of this land, he said. The Serengeti is mine. I earned it through blood and hardships you can't even imagine. And I have kept it through more corpses than you can count. I will not give even a single inch, Leo said with a growl. Greed can be blinding. Are you really going to reject my proposal? Is it war that you want? I took you to be wiser, Scarface said, not backing down. You are the foolish one. So utterly foolish and arrogant, Leo said. You negotiate as if we are equal. Perhaps your proposal sounds fine from that perspective, but here is the truth, Scarface. Leo paused before he declared loudly, You have nothing to give me. You are nothing. You talk about giving me part of the Masai Mara? If I want, I could take your kingdom away from you like stealing prey from a hyena. No, easier. The world gives everything to the strong, and it gave everything to me, Leo said. This time, Scarface lost his cool. How could he not? He was a king with his own pride and ego. He could not take such disrespect lying down. So it's really bloodshed you are after, Scarface said. No, not at all, Leo replied. Killing bores me. Although utterly foolish, I acknowledge your intention, Scarface. So I propose you and your pride leave the Serengeti as soon as possible. Return to your little kingdom, bear through the dry season like everyone does, and be grateful I do not take everything I could. I'm afraid I can't do that. How could I keep my pride starving when I know a way they could never hunger? Scarface asked. You accuse me of greed, but you are the greedy one, Leo said. Wanting more than you can have is greed, and that is what you are doing. And you are not greedy because all this land is within your capability. Scarface asked. I am satisfied with far less than I can easily acquire, Leo replied. Your arrogance knows no bounds. Well, many tried, but no one has told me otherwise. No one could show me my limit, Leo said. My patience, on the other hand, has bounds. It is only through my absence that you even ruled for as long as you did. Now that I have returned, leave, Leo said in a tone of finality. Scarface bit down on his anger and his urge to strike. Even in rage, he was still smart enough to know he stood no chance against Leo. When push came to shove, he would fight, but if avoidable, he wanted to avoid conflict now. That was always the plan, after all. If you truly believe your words, let me be the one to put them to the test, Scarface said, relaxing his body and hoping that would also release a bit of his anger. We do not want war, but if we need to go through war to get what we want, we will. Like we always did, Scarface said and shifted his body to turn. Where do you think you are going? Leo said. That stopped Scarface mid-action as he turned to face Leo. By that point, Leo was already going into battle mode. His eyes were now glaring, and his manner came alive, growing bigger, and his teeth were bared. Do you think I will let you go just like that? After you basically declared inevitable conflict? Leo asked, after I killed you here, I reckoned it would be easier to kill 3 lions than 4. And I reckon 3 lions will have a much easier time taking you down injured than fully healed, Scarface said, not backing down in the slightest as he stepped forward and faced Leo fully. He knew his place. He knew his strength. The only reason he came to meet Leo so quickly, even though he suspected the rumors were true, is that if Leo was truly this powerful lion, there was no better time to meet him than after fighting 3 lion prides. Leo should be at his weakest possible. He also did not come here only to propose the deal. He came here scouting, and the reason it took him more than a day to meet Leo was that he was studying the terrain in case of a conflict. Whether Leo tried to kill him here now or whether he let him go, Scarface had already planned that the enemy would lose in both cases. First POV. It started with anger. Now I was amused. Because who the hell does this sissy think he is? An injured lion would be easier to take down by 3 lions than an uninjured one? Are you kidding me? I could take 3 lions with 2 hands tied behind my back and with my eyes closed. I could be a lionworm and still mop the floor with 3 lions. But the reason why this arrogance amused me instead of making me angrier was the intelligence behind his words. It was not so much that he was delusional about his own strength, but rather that he simply did not realize the extent of my capabilities. Ignorance, not denial. There was a difference. What was your name again? Scarface, right? I asked. Out of all the lions I had faced, it was easy to remember that name. Not only because of the scar on his eye, but also because it was awfully similar to Scar's name, and he was a remarkable lion. Scarface did not answer. His body was pulled back like a bow, ready to launch out and fight or turn back and run. I couldn't tell which one he was planning to do from his posture. He was extremely smart. I could tell that alone from speaking to him and also by the information Grim had told me while coming here. He not only came here to propose this deal with me, but also to scout out future conflict. He did not come here straight for me, preferring to find where I had left my mark, to see my patrolling path. He remembered the terrains and so on. The broken prides of the frauds I had killed also came to him. The reason why he came immediately afterward was because he thought I would be at my weakest after fighting those. It was impressive, really, to see a lion who would think like I do. It made me wonder if he was a reincarnated human too. If you don't want to talk, then fine, I said and launched off. For limbs worked as one, and I was already at incredible speed from the start. I saw his eyes widen briefly at the speed with which I crossed the distance. Scar did not move yet. He instead ground his paws on the ground, like how a bull would when about to charge. Stupid, I thought to myself, and I roared. I could tell from the moment he saw me move that he realized he had underestimated my physical ability. I leapt at him when I got close, paws out and claws curving forward, ready to grab. I was used to fights, especially fights with other lions. Whatever he was about to do now, I thought it would be nothing new I hadn't seen. And whatever action he might take, it would be rendered useless. Stronger lions had tried, and all had failed to stop me. But contrary to all my expectations, what he did caught me completely off guard and managed to stop me. Sand. The bastard threw sand in my eyes. I closed my eyes quickly, but some still managed to get in. My leap continued until I crashed on where he once stood and grabbed empty air. I still could not see clearly, but no attacks came. And from the sound, I could hear a lion running away. I laughed. I laughed hard. I rubbed my eyes for a bit before I opened them again to see his fleeing figure. I could have easily caught up at this distance. I was not faster than other lions in the long run, but in short distance bursts, I could speed blitz them all. But I didn't move, letting the chance to catch up to him slowly slip away. I moved my eyes to see the place where he once stood. The plain lacked much vegetation because a buffalo herd had grazed there not more than a week ago. The ground was marked with small caves of their hooves. The ground was basically dried mud. I saw that when he ground his paws like a bull, he was actually grinding up those chunks of dry mud back into sand. He was smart, extremely so. He was able to come up with a plan to escape the moment he saw that I was faster and stronger than he thought. Follow after him, Grim, I said, my face still splitting with a smile. Oh, how long had it been since someone outsmarted me and made me a fool? Most lions I met before only seemed to make me greater, but Scarface had completely outsmarted me every step of the way. I was moaning about not finding equals anymore, but it seemed the universe heard my prayers and sent me a remarkable opponent. I will enjoy this very, very much, I said. It seemed the both of us had approached while underestimating each other. I thought he would be like any lion, maybe a tad bit smarter. So I did not take precautions. I had been careless. Scarface just taught me to never let my guard down and to never let my brawn get over my brains. And next time, I am coming to him. Third POV. Scarface looked back over his shoulder and was relieved to see that Leo was not chasing after him. He breathed out a sigh. That monster, he said to himself, but still continued to run. He would admit that a part of him was ready to fight to the bitter end to carve a better chance for his brothers. But when Leo puffed out his maner and charged, a part of Scarface that thought he would stand even the slightest chance died. He had brains and brawn, the deadliest combination in nature. Due to the high alert that he was in, Scarface did not miss the vulture that was following his tail. He hummed to himself and made turns to confirm that the vulture was indeed following him. He recalled the time in the Serengeti where they never had vultures in the sky, and those same birds returned with Leo. They are his subjects, he concluded. The vultures were not simply following Leo to find opportunities for his big kills. No, these vultures also took orders. I never thought of that, Scarface said. He had always found allies with his brothers, so it never crossed his mind to find more. Scarface changed direction completely to head toward the thick jungle of the Serengeti. He did not really like being tailed like this. Under the cover of those trees, he thought he would give less away to the vulture. Scarface did not waste a single moment lingering in the southern Serengeti. He made his journey straight back to his pride. Because of this, a journey that normally took more than a day lasted less than half the time. Only when he saw his brothers approaching from a distance as he entered the central Serengeti did Scarface calm down. "It's good to see you return safe," Sikio said. The other two brothers also made their way towards Scar. They were in the middle of a patrol when they smelled Scarface's scent. The place they were meeting was the outskirts of their kingdom, with the rest of the pride nowhere in sight. "I came back, somehow," Scarface admitted. "So? What was he like?" Hunter inquired immediately. "Was he too much of a disappointment?" "It surprises me that you did not take him down by yourself," Morny said. They circled around Scarface, who stopped. They checked for injuries and saw no signs of a fight happening. "We need to drop that, all of us," Scarface said. The three brothers paused and tilted their heads. "We need to drop the mindset and adopt the one we had," Scarface said. "Run it back to when we fought against the Talek Coalition." The Talek Coalition was a huge lion coalition formed near the Talek River in the Masai Mara. These kings ruled the Mara for the longest time until the four musketeers finally defeated them. But during that war, the musketeer brothers were the weaker ones, so they fought an uphill battle and somehow came out victorious. "Are you for real?" Sikio asked in wonder. "What happened?" they asked. "Listen to me, brothers," Scarface said, his tone lowering an octave and his voice turning grave. "We share the world with monsters. We must prepare for a losing war." First POV, I climbed onto my usual place in the copy, the highest point on the hill. But this time, I did not come to rest. I had another purpose. My blood was literally boiling from my previous confrontation. I wanted so badly to see what Scarface would do when he was cornered. How long would it take for him to give up? And how hard would I have to try to get him to that point? I wanted to know. Crap. My injuries. They weren't bad anyway. I roared as loud as I could when I reached the top. My voice came out excited, explosive. It was not a long, drawn-out roar meant to travel distance. It was a short burst to get attention. The pride knew what that entailed. It was a summons. They got up from where they were and came. They gathered under me, all lionesses and cubs. And when everyone was present, I declared, "We are moving. We are not going to wait any longer in the worst part of my kingdom. We are going to move north, towards the central Serengeti," I said. The lionesses from the Serengeti pride perked up immediately. The central region had always been their home since even before I appeared. "I want us to get there in 2 days at most. We will be moving right now," I said. The pride immediately followed my command, scaling down the copy to begin their journey north. No one questioned why. Grim returned right then, flying around in circles a few times before he landed beside me. I continued watching my pride climb down the mountain as Grim reported. "I've lost sight of the lion. He hid under the cover of the trees, but I've told the other vultures to fly above and report back to me the moment he comes out into the open plains," he said. "So he also figured out about us that quickly," I said with a smile. "Most animals are dumb, not knowing till now that you guys listen and work for me. So what should we do next? Should I go to the central region and scout them out?" he asked. "That wouldn't be necessary," I said. We are all going there. Will that be a good idea, my lord? Grim asked, his head turning toward me. I met his eyes. No. But it's a fun idea. I was not going to wait here and give them time to plan or launch an attack on me themselves. No. This was my kingdom, and I would be the one to do the cleanup. Third POV. Scarface and Leo met. Our speculation was true. The leader of the 4 musketeers really came down to meet with him, Emmanuel said the moment Dr. Tunsun came back to the tent with a cup of his favorite coffee. Wait, what? Dr. Tunsun blinked. All that happened during the 1 hour I was gone. He immediately came in front of the many screens shown on the main table. One live footage caught his attention, and that was Leo's pride all leaving their copy and heading north, from what he could tell. Are they moving again? Already? Yep. Probably to the central Serengeti if I had to make a bet, Emmanuel said while reclining on the chair. And who takes a shit for 1 hour? He asked. There was this very peculiar honey badger who was very fond of me. Followed me around and tried to disturb every good spot I found, Dr. Tunsun said. Made me take a shit in 5 different locations. You, Dr. Emmanuel said. Be careful. Some territorial lion might mistake you for marking the land and attack you. Don't give me ideas, Dr. Tunsun said, pushing his glasses up to play back the existing footage of when Leo and Scarface met. Is the footage broken? Dr. Tunsun asked when he finally saw what he was looking for. Leo and Scarface met, but it was mostly them just facing off with each other and growling. It was the strangest thing to look at, making everyone tilt their heads. Weird. Huh? It's like they're having a conversation, Dr. Emmanuel said. It probably is. They're having a conversation as kings, in the language of lions, Dr. Tunsun said. Emmanuel scoffed, waiting for the joke. But Dr. Tunsun was dead serious. There was no humor in his body language. Are you for real? We never know. Dr. Emmanuel stayed silent. Dr. Tunsun was someone he highly respected, so seeing that he had belief, or at least speculation, that lions could communicate like that made him think a bit more deeply on the subject. Indeed, most of these weird behaviors would make much more sense if they stopped underestimating these animals and, for a moment, gave it to them that they could communicate. Do you think there's a chance there will be a war? You know, pride wars, not just between the kings. Like the one you witnessed back then, Dr. Emmanuel asked. Although unbelievable at first, there was proof of that happening. The doctor still couldn't wrap his head around how that could be real. Lion pride's fighting. Hyenas becoming an army under lion. The whole pride is moving, so maybe, Dr. Tunsun said softly. There was a silence of anticipation as Emmanuel smiled and rocked back and forth in his chair. How amazing would it be if he got to witness such a scene too? But eventually, he remembered something. You know, I also heard some news while you were away, Dr. Emmanuel said. Dr. Tunsun responded, but he did not take his eyes off the screen. We found an abandoned camp this morning. Still had some campfires and other residues, even though they were clearly trying to hide it, he said. Okay. Thing is, we found it near the Mara River in the northern Serengeti. We have no one there, Dr. Emmanuel revealed. That finally made him turn. We think they're poachers, Dr. Emmanuel said. Goddamn it. Dr. Tunsun took off his glasses to rub his eyes. Damn. Yeah, but we're hoping to catch them or at least scare them off soon. I already called headquarters to send more rangers, he said. That's good. We don't want anyone dying over greed, Dr. Tunsun said, to which Emmanuel agreed with a hum. First POV. 2 days later, here I am. On the outskirts of what the kings probably thought was their territory. I stopped the pride the moment I smelled the scent on one of the trees. It was the first mark I had found of these kings, and from the smell, let's just say I was not that impressed. Should we go out hunting? Zuri asked when the pride finally settled down. No. You will hunt after I defeat the lions here. Before that, it is too dangerous, I said. Okay, she obeyed easily enough. She studied my body language for a moment, trying to see if it would be okay if she lingered or even showed some affection. But I was currently in preparation, my body taut with energy ready to be unleashed. She decided to back away, returning to the rest of the pride. After a while, I finally thought it was time. "Are you ready, Grim?" I asked. "Always," he answered, standing on top of a tree beside me. It was the same tree that had the scent. "Let's do this then." I sucked in a deep breath, allowing air to build up in my chest until it expanded and the air literally became mine. I put my whole energy behind it. I threw my head to the sky and roared. Roar! It was so loud it shook the ground and spooked every living being. Even my own pride flinched back. It was just natural instinct to move away when you heard such a loud sound, even while knowing who it came from and who it came for. My shattering roar was followed by a horde of vultures suddenly taking flight into the sky. They made sounds of their own amid the echo of my roar. Then they flew toward those who were going to die soon. "Scarface, hope you prepared well." "Third Pui, I can give you everything Leo gives you," Scarface said, sitting in front of a half-eaten carcass that currently had a dozen or so vultures enjoying the remains. "You will live in abundance, more so than when you work under him. My pride is bigger, and I have my brothers with me. Serving me would be far more beneficial to you," Scarface said, trying to sound convincing to the horde of vultures that did not give him a shred of attention and continued to dig into the meat. Scarface was getting frustrated. Trying to convince them was akin to barking up an empty tree. It bore no fruit, and he had been doing this for more than a day now. But eventually, one vulture came up to him. It walked on both legs, its belly filled with meat by now. It could not have eaten more. "What about you? I do not need the others. If I just have one of you, that would be enough," Scarface said, righting his posture as he thought the vulture was about to accept his proposal. The vulture stopped right in front of Scarface, showing no fear as it gazed at him. Why would it fear other lions when it had been in the presence of Leo himself? "So? What do you say?" Scarface asked hopefully. The vulture opened its beak and remained like that for a while. Scarface waited with bated breath. But eventually, what came out was not words but its vomit. "Why you?" Scarface roared. The vultures quickly escaped in a flap of feathers and laughs. "Those insolent birds," Scarface said, cleaning the vomit off his paws. "You've tried that 100 times. Why bother?" Hunter asked, his body completely covered in the feathers of vultures. There had been cases when the vultures pissed off the kings so they caught them and killed them. But even with that, the vultures still did not show any respect towards them. "You don't realize how beneficial it would be if we could work with the birds too," Scarface said. "We would be almost unstoppable. But it seems these birds are not ready to betray their king." "They have quite the loyalty for birds," Hunter commented. Scarface shook his head. "It has nothing to do with loyalty. They are never convinced, even for a moment, that we would be better than him. Which is strange." Scarface continued, "You would think such faith in Leo would be completely impossible. It's almost like they have been brainwashed and someone had convinced all these vultures to almost worship the king. If you know, you know." But Grim would have a proud smirk and wink if he heard what they said. "What about the other birds? If you desperately want allies in the sky, try other birds," Hunter said. Scarface shook his head once more. "The other birds would not work with us. They have nothing to gain. Most birds eat insects, and others are predators of their own. The vultures are the only possible species to work with. It seems we have to fight this battle while being more uninformed," Scarface said with a sigh, "as if we needed more disadvantages." Scarface went towards Hunter and the two lay together, close enough for their bodies to touch. Behind them was their pride, but only half was present at the moment. They were mostly juveniles, cubs, and older lionesses. An hour passed as they hung around. Then, they saw their brothers and the rest of the pride returning from a distance. These lions had set out to hunt today. But if you looked closely, you would notice that there were already many carcasses and half-eaten carcasses in their pride. Why were they hunting more? Why were they storing food away? Almost? It was a strategy the Four Musketeers had used many times when at war with other coalitions. They did not have a pride of their own before they became kings, so whenever they wanted to challenge the kings, They needed to hunt beforehand so that they would not need to hunt after the battle when they were injured. But another question could pop up. Why would they apply that strategy now, when they had a pride to hunt for them? Well, the vultures interfered with our hunt, Scipio said with a mean face the moment he reached Scarface and Hunter. They revealed our positions every time and they chased away the herds before we could start the hunt, Moroni continued, following right behind Scipio. Scarface did not look surprised. Just like we expected. There is much you can do when you have that many vultures under you. As we know, Leo applied the same strategy when he was outmatched by the Mbali coalition. So what should we do? We are stopped from hunting in our own territory, Hunter asked with an angry growl. The quicker we do this, the better our chances. Leo would recover while he starves us. He has the advantage in the long run. We need to fight the moment he reaches the Serengeti, Scarface said. And right then, as if on cue, a roar split the sky. It was so loud it shook the air. It was so loud that it immediately kicked up the Lion Kings and they stood up, fully alert. There was silence in the whole region as the roar echoed. He's here, Moroni said the obvious. He is quicker than we estimated. We thought he would at least take a week, Hunter added. Let's go, Scarface said and immediately led his brothers towards where the sound came from. The four kings walked together, leaving their pride for a moment to respond to the roar. They walked a few distances but all came to a stop when they reached a large tree with thick branches and green leaves. The four of them stopped. Strangely enough, there were two lionesses that stayed under the shade of that tree. The location was not far, but it still gave the impression that these lionesses were not part of their pride. Well, that was because they were not. The lionesses looked up at them briefly before ignoring them. That was not how lionesses were supposed to act in front of their king. But as mentioned before, the four musketeers were not their kings. These lionesses were from the Northern Pride. A new pride that emerged under the rule of two kings. There were only 4 lions in their number. But what was the Northern Pride doing here in the central Serengeti? I suppose everyone heard that, Scarface said while standing underneath the tree. It's always hard to miss his roar. A voice came from above. There, on top of the tree and hidden beneath the thick roof of leaves, were the 2 kings of the Northern Pride. The branches were thick, so these large lions were able to lazily hang onto the tree like they were leopards or something. It's like getting ready to fight your nightmares, the other king commented. If Leo looked at the 2 kings staying up in the tree, he would recognize them immediately. They were the same lions whom he kicked out the moment he took over the Serengeti Pride. Taking the names of their respective fathers, they called themselves Baraka and Roku, the second coming of the Mbali brothers. They had ruled the northern region. They were young but powerful from the genes of their fathers. Originally, there were 3. Leo kicked out 3 grown lions when he first took over. But one of them had already passed away in battle, leaving this coalition half complete. But in turn, they had been ruling the northern Serengeti for a few months. A year had gone by, and these lions were ready to take revenge. If you were wondering how Scarface expected the vultures to interfere with the hunt, it was because these 2 had informed him in detail how Leo took down the coalition of their fathers. Are you 2 ready? Scarface asked. The 2 lions who had been hiding from the eyes of the vultures came down the trees, and their faces were immediately rageful. Leo did not know they were here. Always. With the 4 musketeers and these 2 kings, there were 6 prime lion kings in total that were going to meet Leo in a clash. Although Leo was powerful, he was not invincible. If we look at this from a logical and physical sense, Leo was outmatched. Perhaps he could take down the 4 musketeers together, but this was just too much. And this coalition came to be because the first thing Scarface did in preparation for Leo was to head towards the Northern Territory and invite them to form an alliance. The proposal went better than expected. They would form an alliance and kill a common enemy. But also, the Northern Pride would be given lionesses to increase their pride after the battle was won. The 4 musketeers had a pride of over 30. Many lionesses from the east, west, and south had come seeking new prides in them. So it was not really a loss to give these lionesses over to the northern kings. The result was this. The first alliance between 2 lion coalitions in history. The humans were going to have a field day. Let's kill a monster then, Scarface said with a wide grin splitting his face. 6 kings, all royalty by strength and by heritage. They headed towards a living storm that was going to test them and make them complete through death or through victory. First POV, we have a problem. We have a big, big problem. Grim said while flying back at me. I had sent him to scout out the enemies once more. You know, being more cautious this time. They could be setting up an ambush or run for all I know, so although he had scouted before, so I let him do it again. But I didn't expect him to return so soon. I paused with a tilted head. What is it, Grim? My lord. There are 6 of them, not 4, he said, falling on his face in his attempt to land quicker. Explain, I said firmly. Grim picked himself up from the ground and quickly spat out the dirt he had eaten. It's that scared lion. That prick. He had invited the Northern Pride for an alliance, and they accepted. Now 6 Lion Kings are coming after you. My eyes widened briefly before they narrowed in amusement. He did that? Smart. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Oh God, this is great. Why are you laughing, my lord? I don't understand. Grim asked in concern. We were not prepared to fight 6 lions. We thought there would be 4. This changes everything. It does, it really does, I said and hummed thoughtfully. I don't think I can take 6 lions at once. Especially when they had Scarface on their side. That guy was super smart. The most I have fought are 5 lions at once, but those were dumb fodder. Now there were 6 lions, strong enough to be kings even in other regions, and they were going to be led by a lion with a proper brain. This could be dangerous. Extremely dangerous. What are we going to do, my lord? They are coming right at you as we speak. And you already revealed the Pride's location with that roar too, Grim said, grabbing his head with his wings. I'm not sure. But what I do know is what we are not going to do, and that is to panic, I said, causing him to stop his hyperventilating. Think about it, Grim. 6 lions is not the worst we've faced, I said. You're right, he said and swallowed. You're right again, my lord. I smiled. If Scarface is smart enough to make alliances like this, he would also be smart enough to make other plans too. He has seen me before, seen me in action, so he should have an effective way to take me down. But we are not going to play his games. This just means that we change our mindset a bit too, I said and deepened my posture. We have to be far more ruthless than expected. I was trying to have some fun taking them down, but it seemed I would have to find joy in the violence once more. I stopped making my way towards them and instead circled around in thought. It was hard to come up with a plan on the spot. I threw out the idea of separating them and taking them down one by one. Scarface would never make that stupid mistake. Holding off this clash was also out of the question. He would not allow me to play my games, just like how I was not going to play his. I paused suddenly, getting an idea in my head. It was not the best plan. Heck, it was not even a plan. But I can't help but wonder. Grim, how do you think Scarface would react if I killed his brother? I asked suddenly. He was ready to die fighting with me just to give his brothers a shot at taking me down. This proves that Scarface was not a selfish lion. Quite the opposite, actually. I don't really like the way my mind is working like Scar's, I said. But if it works, it works. What was the report about hyenas in the Serengeti again? I asked Grim. Speaking of Scar, those little rascals immediately came to my mind. I had spared around 2 clans worth of hyenas for siding with me in my final battle with Scar. I had told them to return to the Serengeti and that they could live there in my kingdom from henceforth as a reward. I spared their lives. But unfortunately, fraud kings had ruled my kingdom in my absence. And when these hyenas returned, they were not welcomed at all. Instead, they were persecuted and killed, a direct cross of my authority. I had not cared too much back then when Grim reported about that in his daily news. I already spared their lives. If they died again, it was not my problem. Grim's eyes widened. He immediately caught up to what I was insinuating. You don't mean? He said. They worked for me once and betrayed Scar. They can do it again, I said. And this time, don't tell them I need help. Tell them that their king has taken pity on their predicament and is willing to give them a chance for revenge. Go now, I said, and Grim immediately left with a quick change of plans. On the other hand, I continued making my way towards the enemies. If they could bring an alliance with them, so could I. And I did not even need the hyenas to fight under me like my pride had. Their presence alone would change the entire stake of the battle. Let's take a page out of Scar's book. Third po. I smell him now, Hunter said with a growl as they made their way towards the roar. They were not running, conserving their energy as much as possible. He should be able to smell us, too, and know that it is not 4 but 6 lions that are waiting for him. And yet he does not stop, Moroni said, his voice impressed at what he took to be a brave character. That does sound like him, Roku said with a chuckle. He did not cower away from taking down 3 dominant kings on his own. He met my fathers on more than one occasion and ran away most of the time. But when the time came, he never backed away. He recalled the time Leo bravely defended his kill when the Mbali brothers tried to steal it away from him. He would avoid them before he was ready, but when push came to shove, Leo was one prideful lion. Scarface was silent at this point, seriously contemplating how he saw Leo. He thought Leo was smarter and had made plans and strategies on how to deal with him if he ever tried to escape. Are you so delusional that you think you can take us all? Scarface said in a whisper. He never thought Leo would insist on a battle after knowing the true might of the enemy. Let's stop here, Scarface said out loud, and the whole group came to a stop. The place was a bit of a jungle, with giant green trees blooming every few meters. If they continued more, they would go out of the tree line and go out into the open plain. There, Leo could potentially use his vultures to aid him. But under all these trees, those birds would be useless. Let him come to us, he said. No one questioned his order and they waited. Most of them still thought Leo would stop too and not come straight to their perfect battlefield. But the thick stench of his scent only got closer. It smelled like dried blood and pure testosterone. He smelled a bit like a bull elephant while it was in a must state. They waited. And waited. Until Leo's presence silenced the whole region. He always came with silence because the world knew to be quiet and hide in the presence of its most apex predator. The 6 lions took their natural positions. They were not just standing in a line but in a proper formation. Some stood behind the other to hide themselves and, in times of a fight, their movement. Finally, Leo appeared from amid the trees, slowly pacing towards them as if he was taking a stroll. He walked like they were living in his world, like they were nothing. Everyone except Scarface exclaimed in their minds at the sheer size. Leo was literally more than twice the average lion. He weighed a bit over 420 kilograms currently. A stark contrast even to the biggest among them, Baraka, son of Baraka, who was nearing his father's size at 280 kilograms. They finally understood Scarface's statement, "Monsters live among us." To know one's size was one thing, but to witness it firsthand was completely a different matter. The only reason their legs remained stable and did not tremble was the trust they had in their superior numbers. "Look what we have here, a gathering of frauds," Leo began as he strolled towards them, his voice so deep that his words forced themselves into their ears. They didn't try to listen. Their whole body was laser-focused on the massive threat. "I thought I told you to leave, Scarface, but I see my words fall on deaf ears," he said, slowing down his movement further. "Violence. I guess that's the only language we lions understand. It's why I never bothered with words and always started with violence." Leo came to a stop a very generous distance away. If a fight broke out, it would take seconds before they clashed. Leo looked at each lion one by one in an assessing way. He did not seem impressed with any of them as he quickly moved his gaze. But his gaze paused when it fell on the 2 northern kings. Leo grinned. "I know you too," he laughed out loud, a deep laugh that was somehow void of all humor. "Eager to die like your fathers." "Huh? Like father, like son." "Don't talk about my father," Baraka said with a deep growl. "What are you going to do, I wonder?" "You didn't stop me when I gutted them like common prey," he said. "Using cheap tricks to take them down," Roku said with a growl. "We will have our revenge today." "Is that why you are here? For revenge?" Leo asked. "What about showing some gratitude for sparing you? Even after killing your fathers, that would have been easier than eating a full meal." Scarface narrowed his eyes at Leo while his ears searched for any other sound in the surroundings. This was strange. "We will show our gratitude by sparing yours," Roku said. as long as your females are quick to bend for us." Leo frowned at that, his eyes glinting. But he still did not move. "You haven't changed at all since I last saw you. You remain cubs, talking big when you have nothing to show for it," Leo said, and then proceeded to ignore them. He looked at the brothers of Scarface. "Are these the ones you hoped would take me down? Your sheer faith is admirable." "Stop that," Scarface said suddenly with a loud voice. Leo paused, turned his gaze and tilted his head. "Stop what?" "Stalling," Scarface said. "You are stalling for time." Leo had never struck him as someone who liked to talk. He was an impatient lion, actually, making the first move when they met 2 days ago. But now he was talking quite a lot, and Scarface immediately became suspicious. "Am I?" Leo asked. Scarface bit down, frustrated because while he knew Leo was stalling, he did not know why. He did not know what Leo was waiting for. "Yes, you are," Scarface said firmly, and immediately got into a position to launch. Hunter followed right after Scarface without a question. Leo noticed that. And what a grave notice it was for Hunter, because that gave Leo the idea of who was closest to Scarface. "Funny, I have never met a lion so eager to die," Leo said, responding in kind by lowering his sheer mass and getting ready. Now, finally, the rest of the lions followed suit. Teeth bared, those that had taken thousands of lives. Claws that frequently tore through flesh raked out, eager to cut. 6 against 1. "You should have picked an open plain," Leo advised. In the current battlefield with many trees, it was hard to attack from all angles. So while Scarface had stopped the vultures from interfering, he boosted Leo's chances. "Stop talking." Sikio charged immediately, enraged. The others followed. But Leo, he remained in his place. He planted both feet firmly on the ground. His body was lowered in such a way that you could see his muscled back from above his head. It was like a cat ready to fight. He leaned to the side, muscles rippling through his forearm and shoulder. He leaned on the other side, his muscles once again wiggling beneath skin like they were alive. He shook his head lightly, making his mane grow darker and bigger. When his lips peeled back, it revealed rows of sharp teeth so long they could bite through a lion. Leo was a monster in every sense of the word. Suddenly, new questions popped into the minds of everyone. Opinions that were made while looking at a calm king were shaken. When Leo finally entered such a prime mode for violence, you couldn't help but wonder, do they really stand a chance? In front of his might, logic is usually the first to flee in fear. Third POV, Sikio charged first. Leo was just standing there, waiting, studying, and planning. His nose released smoke due to the sheer internal heat that was building up inside. Sikio leapt into the air and struck. His arms swung with enough force and speed to make the air whistle. But when he struck, Leo did not respond like other lions did. He did not stand there to exchange blows. He was gone. He was under him. Sikio swung at empty air, and by that point, a heavy blow struck him from under. He never felt the sensation of his legs making contact with the ground, as Leo had grabbed him mid-air and raised him even higher. A pathetic roar that came out more like a wheeze left his mouth. Air was knocked out of his lungs and he was ragdolled like no one had ever done. "Am I a lion?" That was his final line of thought before his back crashed into a tree. Boom! His eyes widened, mouth open to vomit, spit and air. He was knocked out immediately and he limply fell off the tree like a fly that had been spattered against a wall. "Foolish," Leo commented. "When they have superior strength or numbers, lions often lose their brains to arrogance." "Sikio!" The brothers roared and charged even faster. Hunter was the second one to reach him. But unlike the first one, he did not make the same mistake. But that mattered little in the grand scheme of things. He was overwhelmed by the tight spaces of the forest. Could you imagine that? One lion overwhelming 6. Hunter exploded out like a missile. He did not attack from above or below. He was a rocket going straight at his target. Leo was much taller than him, so the only thing at his level was the ripped shoulder. Hunter clamped down on the shoulder, and Leo let him. After he was glued to the shoulder, Leo simply leaned and fell on the side. His huge weight and superior strength made him almost unstoppable as he crushed Hunter between his shoulder and another tree. "Like I said, you chose your battlefield poorly," Leo commented. The first crush was not enough to knock him out, but Leo slammed him into the tree once more. Morani jumped and crashed into the enemy. Leo stood on his hind legs, carrying with him the weight of another lion as Hunter continued to clamp on the shoulder with all his might. Leo opened his jaw wide. His jaw was much wider than Morani's open maw. Teeth clashed in a brutal union. Leo bit down first, his canine penetrating Morani's lower jaw and hooking it in a deadlock. He tore, threatening to split the lower jaw, but the bone was harder than the force he applied. Baraka and Roku came from the flank, one from the right, the other from the left. Leo's ears moved, hearing them coming from miles away. He stepped back, dragging two lions with him as their feet slid helplessly on the earth. When they realized they couldn't hold him down, Morani and Hunter raked out their claws at Leo's thick hide. Their hooked knives found no purchase as they only made a line on the skin. But they eventually hooked on skin. Baraka and Roku were not able to slam into Leo like they planned, for he had moved back into the cover of trees. But they still reached their target regardless. Their jaws searched for purchase at his spine. 4 jaws and 8 claws were tearing Leo. That were more weapons than he ever had to deal with. He slammed one more time into the tree. His shoulder crushed Hunter's head against the cold bark of the tree. There was a snap, a dislocated jaw. The bite was loose with a pained moan. Leo opened his jaw and tore away from his clash with Morani. He slammed his head on Morani. There was the sound of bone smashing on bone with no care for anyone's health. Morani lowered his head in pain. That gave Leo the perfect opening to bite at the thick scruff of the lion. Both his paws came under Morani, and with a push of strength from his hind legs, he threw Morani over his head. A 250-kilogram lion was thrown overhead due to sheer strength and the use of proper technique. His heavy body crashed on Roku, who was attacking from the side. Roku had to release his bite and put focus on moving away from the body thrown. That left only Baraka attacking. Leo twisted his body. In a show of flexibility that should be impossible with all that muscle mass, his jaw clamped down on the lion's skull. His jaw opened wide enough to grab the skull in a vice grip. Baraka screamed as sharp teeth sank into both sides of his face. His bite was forgotten. Leo then picked him up like a mother cat handling a kitten. Leo's neck flexed. Muscles rarely seen due to the thick mane worked overtime. He could drag a bull giraffe for miles. A lion was nothing. Leo tucked his front legs under him, and he fell with the head in his mouth. His weight smashed his head on the earth. It was wet and damp, so it did not do the damage he hoped for. But that was enough to concuss the lion. Leo released his hold and spun around with all his might. Claws that were hooked on his hide came loose with chunks of skin. Leo bolted away from the tight space. He was surrounded. Now he had to reset the battleground. But before he made it far, Scarface, who was observing most of the time, crashed on his side and actually pushed him against the trees. "You are not running away," Scarface roared. Leo tried swiping the legs under him, but Scarface was smart enough to dodge and not fall. He latched his claws against Leo's traumatized hide instead. "Who says I'm running?" Leo said and dodged a swipe that came at him from Roku. The bark on the tree was ripped apart, leaving a deep claw wound on the tree. Leo stood on his hind legs. That opened a grave mistake of exposing his underbelly. But he forced Scarface to stand with him, so he used that as a shield to protect his vulnerable parts. When standing like that, he was much taller than the rest. Even Scarface only reached his chest. Scarface pushed himself away to create space and opened his jaw to bite at the open chest. But Leo moved first and plunged his paw inside the open maw. His claws came out and raked back. He cut Scarface's tongue and the soft tissue of the mouth with one quick pull. Blood came out like vomit. He then pushed Scarface under him and he jumped. His feet landed on the back of Scarface. His immense weight was enough to push the lion flat on the ground. Leo used him like a dirty mat and ran over him, his unfurled claws making sure to leave a mark. Roku was there to stop him again, but Leo snatched him by the side of his head. He then thrashed his head violently until he ripped off an ear. Roku groaned in pain, but adrenaline did not allow that to hinder him. He exploded in a fury of violence at Leo. His claws raked flesh, and his teeth clamped down on a forearm. Leo was a big target. He was like a mountain, which you could attack in any way, even if the attack was useless most of the time. But it was a grave mistake to bite Leo by the forearm because now, Leo could control his head position. Leo pulled his arms down, Roku's head along with it, and he flipped the lion to his side in one powerful sweep. When the lion showed his underbelly, Leo dug in. It was too late now as his jaw found purchase at the softer skin and completely ripped open the belly skin. You could see the pulsating insides. Leo was strong, but not enough to kill a lion with one blow. But when did they show such a vulnerable part? He did not miss the chance. Blood pooled in the open cavity immediately. The bite on his forearm was released. It stung. It really stung. But the enemy had the worst trade-off. Morani charged forward. The humiliation of being thrown overhead so easily made him rage even further. But the multiple bodies and the tight spaces of the tree made it hard to really swarm the enemy. Sikio, who was taken out first, had also gotten up and was running in a curve to flank against Leo. Morani pounced at Leo, catching his back. But before his claws managed to really dig in and before his bite could find skin, Leo moved forward. Leo made a U-turn on one of the trees and crashed into Sikio, who was trying to flank him from the side. They exploded out in a blur of flesh and fur. Growls echoed between the trees and blood flew out like decorations. But in such a clash, Leo had the upper hand. He pressed Sikio against a tree and he used his weight to press and trap him there. He bent down and swept the lion's hind legs under him and Sikio fell sideways and crashed on the open roots of the tree. Leo raked at the open belly once more. He could not bite, as his jaw was busy defending against Sikio, who was always aiming for his neck. Scarface used that chance to leap on Leo's back. His jaw immediately clamped down on Leo's back neck, and his claws were used as an anchor. Leo roared out in pain, his eyes narrowed in rage, before he bolted out. He lost more chunks of skin as he escaped from Sikio's grab. Leo ran with Scarface on top of him. He moved between the trees quickly to buy some time to deal with Scarface. Scarface, on the other hand, was busy dealing damage. His bite bore fruit as he could taste blood in his mouth. He got more feral afterwards, finally knowing this monster bleeds. Leo jumped and twisted his body. They crashed together, but with Scarface being the one under and receiving the full extent of the trauma. Their bodies traumatized the ground and made a scar. They crashed into the tree, where they came to a stop. Scarface felt his body going limp even though he did not want to. Leo quickly turned to his side to not show his underbelly. Scarface lay in that spot, not able to hold on to Leo anymore. His claw retracted, and his bite had no crush. Brother! Scarface heard Hunter coming after him. The others were still not here yet, recovering from fighting a lion. They never had a chance one-on-one. No. Scarface grinned out. Leo's eyes were almost white with glee. His jaw was bloody from the deadly bites he had delivered. His body was at the peak of heat in that moment, but when he saw the goal, his body produced power like no other. Hunter came running, his jaw bouncing like a bag of tits. He had not even fixed his dislocated jaw, and a lion who could not bite was useless in front of Leo. Hunter pounced, his full weight coming down with a blur of fur. Leo took a step back, always patient even when he had the clear chance. Hunter landed on empty air with a thud and he lashed out. His paws swung out, right, left, right, left. Leo continued to move back and dodged the paws with knives at the end. When Leo felt a tree behind him and there was no space to move back anymore, he pushed himself off the tree with his hind legs and swung his paw. By that point, he had learned the pattern and timing of Hunter. The paw landed clean, like the perfect inside hook in a boxing match. But unlike a punch, his paw had long claws that tore more than it hit. Leo was aiming right at that dislocated jaw and he hit his mark. What came next was brutal. So brutal it felt like the world paused and temperature dropped. There was the sound of flesh tearing like paper, and the dislocated jaw that hung loosely was ripped off. There was silence as Hunter bled out. His lower jaw was no more. He was not dead yet, but death was inevitable. A lion without a jaw could not even eat. Dying now in this fight would be more merciful than letting him live. No! Scarface forced his body to get up. But even his scream was unheard because, in the exact moment, Leo released a shattering roar. Hunter fell on the ground. He was completely frozen due to being knocked out, so he fell over like a statue. A deep thud resounded, and a lion fell, never to rise again. Third POV. Hunter fell, never to rise again. The other lions came running immediately, and Scarface too charged at Leo. The king, ever so calm, assessed his surroundings first. He looked to his right, at his left, and then above. He saw that the tree beside him had a very thick branch that was low enough that he could climb. Leo jumped onto that tree, finding safety from the sudden charge of angry lions. The lions came, everyone that was able to fight. Baraka, Scarface, Sikio, and Morani. They were still capable of fighting, but at this point, Leo was starting to tire. He had managed to take down 2 lions by now, but if the fight went on, he would evidently lose. Perhaps he could take 2 more to the grave with him, but he would lose by a small margin. His body was full of wounds and missing skin that showed his raw muscle. The lions could not reach Leo while he stood there on the branch. "Come down, you filthy beast!" Sikio roared. Big mistake, because Leo actually did. Sikio was the first to charge in the beginning of the fight, and he was always the one with the loudest mouth. The lions were surrounding the tree, looking up to bite at Leo. But Leo did not even have a hanging tail they could grab, so they were at a loss on what to do. Until Leo leapt down. He crashed into the loudmouth Sikio with no mercy to be seen. Sikio moved back, trying to dodge, but Leo was simply too big and too wide to escape from. Nearly half a ton of mass crashed onto him. The 2 lions rolled away after the crash. There was the snap of a broken leg as Sikio could not bear the weight of the fall. When the roll was over, Leo was at the top and his jaw found the other lion's neck. There was the sound of something crushing. The manner of Sikio was not nearly enough to stop such a wide jaw. Life was literally being choked out of him. But his savior came in the form of his comrade as they swarmed Leo immediately after the fall. 2 lions jumped on his back while another was clawing at his side and trying to find a target for their teeth. In such a swarm of bodies, it was difficult to even know who the enemy was. Leo rose slightly and stomped on Sikio's chest. His immense weight, along with the other 2 lions who were glued on his back, were enough to exert immense pressure. Sikio's ribs broke, his chest caved in, and there was blood flowing out of his nose. In the meantime, he opened his mouth wide. His long fangs bared out like someone pulling out their swords. He twisted his body to the side and pecked at the lion's skull like a bird. He did not bite. Instead, he used his long fangs to stab and make holes in the lion's skull. Once, twice, thrice, until the lion retreated in pain, with holes in his head. Leo then stood on his hind legs briefly and reached for his back with his front paws. He grabbed one of the lions on top of his back and with a jerk, he pulled that lion over his shoulder. But the lion, Scarface, had his teeth completely sunk into Leo's muscle and hide. So while he was being thrown over, he managed to rip a muscle and peel away a good chunk of skin. Blood began flowing like a waterfall on Leo's back. The blood was enough for even Leo to feel. He almost panicked, his eyes taking the same shape as the other lions. He was about to give in to the animal instinct of fighting till the very end, similar to how he did when he fought a swarm of hyenas. But he reined in his sanity. He had no wish to die there. He had a plan, and he needed to wait, not go on a blind rampage. Leo turned and bolted away once more. There was 1 lion glued on his lower back. But since he was so much larger than the average lion, the lion glued to him like he would on the back of a buffalo. The fight was completely ridiculous. The number difference and the size difference were awkward, not like how nature intended a fight between lions to go. Leo jogged away. He was almost hopping like a gazelle as he ran to try and throw the lion off his back. It succeeded. And when the lion fell, Leo immediately did a turn and attacked the fallen lion. The lion was Morani, and he was not angry to exchange blows. He was on his back, his body curling into a defensive position to protect his open underbelly. Leo attacked from above. Their heads were both in opposite directions, upside down, as they fought with their teeth. Morani grabbed Leo's head to try and find a better angle to bite. But Leo's mind was still there. When he had the chance, his paws came up and raked at Morani's face, mainly his eyes. His claws ruthlessly dug into the eye socket and blinded him. Morani felt fear as half his world became dark. He panicked, no longer roaring or growling. It was more like a fearful scream. Leo pulled back after he took one eye. His other paw sadly missed its mark, so it left a clear claw mark on Morani's face instead, leaving him half blind but not fully blind. Leo pulled back, breathing heavily while staggering backwards. This might just be the limit for now. Lions were mostly made of fast-twitch muscle, made for insane bursts of strength and not stamina. But even while staggering back and breathing heavily, he had the posture of a king. There was no sign of weakness on his bleeding body. He slowly staggered back until his back hit a tree. He waited as the lions gathered once more. Scarface came, the most uninjured among the lions. Scarface helped the crying Morani up. "Get up, brother, you're fine," he said and gazed deeply at Leo. "We are not done yet." Baraka came next. His head had holes, and his whole manner was drenched with velvet red. Sikio, on the other hand, could no longer fight. He had broken legs, crushed ribs, and many more injuries that put him down. He was alive, breathing heavily in the distance. The three lions stood up, catching their breath and surrounding Leo. They were losing badly, to be perfectly honest. Like Leo said, they chose their battlefield poorly. "This will be the end," Scarface stated while getting into a stance to pounce once more. The three were much less tired than Leo, who was losing too much blood and was marred with bite wounds and claw marks. "I don't think so," a voice came. They looked up at the tree where Leo had his back and saw a vulture with an enraged face. Leo smiled. He was back here for a reason. The lions were completely frozen. Scarface's eyes fell in horror as sounds began coming from all over the forest. Laughs. The forest was laughing. That was not all. The forest began growing shining eyes as these dots of light began shining from every dark corner of the forest. No. A scream, a roar, a dying sound. Sikio was being ripped apart by hyenas where they left him. The same went for Hunter, who was left unconscious with no jaw to defend himself. And Roku, who had his belly opened up, had his inside stolen by gleeful hyenas. All the lions they left behind to fight Leo, Scarface realized, were left to die at the hands of the enemy. A dozen or so hyenas began walking out from the forest. 4 hyenas came by Leo's side to protect him while the other hyenas began surrounding the 3 lions on all sides. Now despair. The 3 lions could see now, between the spaces on the roof of the forest, vultures flying and making sound so loud it was like a nightmare. No, 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 no. Baraka was having a whole panic attack as he saw those vultures. Scarface had a hard face while he locked a hateful gaze at Leo. Leo, on the other hand, had no hate on his face. He was simply looking down at them from his taller height. His face was pulled up, almost in amusement. "It was fun while it lasted," he said. "There was never hope, only delusion. Now run," he said. The hyenas surged out right then, their eyes equally hateful for the lions who had slaughtered their kind even after Leo gave them permission to live. At this point, they did not even view Leo as something they could hate or seek revenge for. But they put all that bitterness on the second ones they hate. And the 3 lions ran, the hyenas pursuing them immediately. Leo did not follow, for he was far too tired and injured now. If he pushed himself, it would only hinder his recovery, and maybe he would die from injuries. The battle was over. It was a hard-fought one, but once more, Leo came out victorious. First POV, "Are you all right, my lord?" Grim asked. "Do I look all right to you, Grim?" I asked with a grin. He gave me a deep up and down look before he shrugged. "You look the same as usual, my lord." "Then I'm all right," I said with a chuckle. I didn't even break a sweat. "They didn't stand a chance even on the brightest day," he said wisely. "That they didn't," I said. "You'd probably beat them again if they magically revived and came after you," he said. "That I can," I said. "Perhaps they should form 5 alliances. Maybe then we could say they almost never beat you," Grim said once more. "I think you are overestimating them, but I'll accept it," I insisted once more. There was a brief silence. "We should get you checked up by the humans before you bleed out and die," Grim suggested once more. "That's probably a good idea," I said. When I tried to step forward, my paw felt mud made from blood. Grim led the way, leaping from branch to branch to show me the nearest way to exit the forest and probably towards the humans. I had told him how useful these humans can be, especially when I'm injured. I've told him long before that if I'm ever in deep trouble, to call the humans for help. I allow them to stay in my territory and study me, and they provide free healthcare. It was a fair trade in my opinion. Walking alone was hard. When the adrenaline wears off, the pain sets in. I was wounded all over. The most problematic of all was the skin that was peeled off my muscle and the part that lost patches of skin. When a breeze hit them, they howled with pain. I was not sure how those were going to heal up. We came out of the forest rather quickly, but it still felt like walking a mile. I could see instantly the human vehicle just beyond the tree line. It was clear they tried their best to observe the action. Most of them were not in the car either and had run back when I came out of the tree line. The only one in the vehicle was the Mexican, whom I assumed was controlling the drones from there. They lost 3 of those trying to fly over the battle, Grim remarked, referring to the drone. I've told the others to be mindful of their flying creatures like you asked, but they still crashed into the roofs of trees. Those metal birds don't know how to fly at all. I chuckled and headed towards the vehicle. Grim, on the other hand, sat on top of the branch of the last tree and observed from there. When I walked close, Dr. Tunsun jumped down from the vehicle and ran up to me. Hannah soon followed. Instead of going back to the vehicle, she did a turn and ran to me along with Dr. Tunsun. I could guess that initially they were wary, thinking that I would be mindlessly aggressive because of the fight that happened not long ago. But the way I calmly walked towards them was a clear sign that I was seeking out help and not victims. Oh God, Dr. Tunsun cursed when he came close to me. My body was covered in blood, so it was only when closely observed that you would see the full extent of my injury. We need a vet. Call one from the main headquarters. Dr. Tunsun yelled before he came to my side. He was even shorter than me when I stood on all fours, but he tried his best to support me from the side. It was laughable. Really. I can walk, I wanted to say. After reaching a few meters away from the vehicle, I finally allowed my legs to give under me and I collapsed. I felt better almost immediately, not carrying the huge bulk of weight I was. He needs painkillers, Hannah determined after she touched my skin. She seemed aghast at what she was witnessing. I wouldn't say this was the worst injury I've had, but it was the most brutal. Lions were brutal creatures indeed. I made myself comfortable on the ground while the humans began helping with my injuries. I closed my eyes when they gave me a shot, and I felt my pain being lifted off. I closed my eyes to rest but never fell asleep. I was always aware of what they were doing to me. They put some medication on my wounds. I think it was betadine again to stop any infections. They brought many bottles of water, which they used to wash my back. My underbelly was mostly fine, as I never let them get the better of me. It was my back and my sides, like the shoulder, that were most injured. They were deep wounds, but there were no vitals there. A few minutes later, I heard the sound of other vehicles stopping and more humans coming to help. I listened to their conversation carefully to know what was up and also know the extent of my injury. This is bad, much worse than you said over the phone, one said. External wounds, my ass. You can see his muscles. These types of injuries are just as lethal as internal injuries. If we weren't here, he would surely die from infection, another said. I don't know who that was, but I want him to know I probably would. But whatever. We need to stitch his wounds closed and also stitch his skin together. If we allow this to scar, it will be too wide, and he will be completely disfigured. He wouldn't have fur on those for one, another said. Lions have loose skin, so perhaps we can pull those together. Or maybe we can draft skin from elsewhere. The humans worked on me for hours. They were like little critters that were healing me with whatever they know. I felt them stitching up my body, applying medications that were making my wounds howl with stinging pain. Hannah also handed me a few pills which I ate from her palm. Holy shit. He is not asleep? I thought we were operating on an unconscious lion. Don't worry, he won't harm you. He knows we are helping him, Dr. Tunsun said to them. What if he just decides I annoy him and eats me? Another one asked, I'm not some dummy. I know he can still easily fold me even with his injuries. Hannah laughed. Calm down. Leo is very patient when it comes to this. This isn't even the first time he let us operate on him. After hours passed, the humans were done, and I could see this because most of them left to head back into their vehicle. It was only Dr. Tun-sun and Hannah who remained by my side. I stood up with a grunt. No, you should still rest. Hannah tried to stop me, but I still stood even with her protest. Don't. He has to return to his pride. He is the king. He can't stay here weak forever, Dr. Tun-sun said. I hummed in acknowledgement. My pride was still there where I left it. By now they probably had a bleeding prey ready for me, and they must be waiting in anticipation for my return. I checked my condition for a few more seconds. I wouldn't say I felt much better, but I knew whatever they did would help me recover smoothly in the future. I bowed my head slightly in acknowledgement before leaving them. I headed towards my pride instead. When I was far away from the humans, Grim came and rested on my back. They patched you up nicely, my lord. Your words are true. The hairless monkeys are indeed useful, Grim commented. What about the enemies? I asked. The hyenas managed to take down one more lion. I believe he is called Morani, but 2 lions managed to escape. I believe Scarface was among them, he said. I laughed when I heard the news. I was only trying to kill the favorite brother, but I ended up slaughtering all of the 4 musketeers, and now only Scarface remained, with no brothers. Anything else I should know about? The hyenas are horrible at sharing. This time we only got scraps of the king, he said. No worries, you guys hate lion meat anyway. I'll take down a buffalo when I am able, just for you, I said. That would be most kind of you, Grim said happily before jumping off my back and flying to the skies again. Third POV, they ran. Chased by the most worthless creatures of all, those that live off the scraps of others. But they ran anyway, for those considered vermin had the backing of the king. Their annoying laughter had never sounded so frightening, their awkward gait never so terrifying. It was the lions that ran from the hyenas. Even when they got the last of his brothers, Morani, the only thing Scarface could do was run without turning back. He was absolutely exhausted. He did not have it in him to fight off a dozen hyenas. Especially when Leo might just get back up and chase after them too. They ran. They left everything behind. Their brothers' corpses, their enemy, their dignity, and the awful ridicule spewed by the hyenas. They couldn't do anything. Nothing at all. For the first time in his life, Scarface experienced what it was like to be outclassed, outsmarted, and outnumbered all at the same time. They only stopped when they were far away from the forest and from the hyenas. Baraka and Scarface decided to rest in secrecy, slowly regaining their strength. They were not wounded badly, especially Scarface, who only had bruises here and there. After an hour of rest and allowing themselves to cool down, they overturned and headed back to the forest again. Now, they were finally ready to fight off those hyenas and get their revenge. But at that point, it was all too late. The forest was empty. There was nothing. They didn't find the corpses of their brothers, as they were devoured by both the scavengers of the land and the sky. Forget about corpses. There was not even a single bone to be found. And the blood on the trees and the earth was the only reminder of the horror that transpired there. The 2 lions left the forest once more, this time still earning nothing. There was no conversation, no talk in between, as the 2 lions acted in absolute silence. Their thoughts, on the other hand, were loud. Both had lost everything. But with every loss came a lesson of some kind. It was the brutal way nature taught her children. But this time, the lesson was harsher than how it was taught. They learned what it meant to stare at the face of the absolute. They learned that in front of the might of that lion, they were nothing. No, they were less than nothing. It was a hard lesson for lions so proud, so egotistical. But perhaps that was exactly what they needed. What do you want to do? Baraka asked. It was the first sentence spoken in hours. The 2 lions were walking slowly, dragging their shameful asses back to their pride. But right now, they were not sure if they even had the nerve to go back. They had been defeated, and in such a shameful manner. They lost in a fight against a single lion, and afterwards they were chased away and shamed by hyenas. How could they call themselves king and rule over others at that point? Their confidence was completely crushed. Scarface paused after thinking about the question. Baraka too stopped his walk as he awaited an answer. Scarface was looking down, His proud head never greeted the world again ever since his brothers died. But for the first time, he looked up once more. Baraka reeled back when he saw Scarface. Red eyes were crying tears. But the eyes showed no sadness, no grief. They only held within themselves unbridled rage. "I'm going to kill that thing," Scarface said. Baraka didn't know how to respond. Scarface spoke the opposite of his thoughts. Baraka wanted to do nothing but run away from the territory and never encounter Leo again. But here was his only remaining companion, and he was so determined to give another try at Leo. And it had not even been a day since the fight happened. That thing should not be allowed to exist. "It is a flaw that wrecked the very balance of our world," Scarface said. "I will correct it." "How are you going to do that?" Baraka asked with visible teeth. "Didn't you see what he did to us? He beat us 6-1. Then next time we will make it 12-1, 100-1 if we must," Scarface roared. "I will do whatever it takes." The memories of him and his brothers flashed in Scarface's mind. It was frightening how the present can become a past you can never get back. It's frightening how fond memories turned tragic. "I will. I will. I will," Scarface mumbled as more tears flowed down. But he was not really crying. No, he was raging more than he was crying. He was planning more than he was mourning. "I promise." In the cruel world of nature, all animals have no purpose in their heart. The only thing they did was eat, sleep, and survive. Their only purpose was the one imprinted in their body, to survive and breed. Nothing else. If one really thought about it, even the lions fighting each other were only driven by this purpose. To eat and breed. It was the cycle of life. A king with no purpose is no true king. And Scarface and his brothers were one of them. They had no other purpose than to take more lands, to breed and eat. But now, Scarface had evolved beyond that. Now he had a purpose, and that was to kill Leo at any cost. This purpose became a higher priority than his primal purpose. He wouldn't kill Leo just to get his land or take over his pride. No, this was deeper and more personal. Scarface had already concluded in his mind that Leo should not exist in this world. So he had given himself the grand purpose of erasing him from this world. Not just Leo, he would massacre every cub of his. Nothing related to him should even exist. "Then I will help you," Baraka said, convinced by the determination in Scarface's eyes. "That monster took my father, my family, my brothers. He had taken away everything." Scarface nodded. "And I'm sure we are not the only ones with this feeling. Every lion that had ever come across Leo should share our sentiments." A lion, the king of the Eastern pride that abandoned his pride and ran away from Leo, would share the sentiment. A lion, a rogue that once fought against Leo with a coalition and became the sole survivor, would also agree. And every lion that Leo had encountered in his life, those that managed to get away from him and were on the run since, they would all agree. Leo needs to go. Not only for their sake but for the sake of their species entirely. When Scarface returned back to the pride, his head was held high again. He was not a coward. He was not just an animal anymore. He had a mission. "Get up, everyone. We lost the battle and we need to move out of the Serengeti quickly," he declared boldly, no longer feeling shame at losing to Leo because at this point, Scarface considered him no longer as a lion but something else entirely. But this is not the end of the story. Scarface would return, and he would have his revenge as a complete king. First POV, God, what happened? Ziri and Nola were the first to greet me. They had been waiting for me. They were the most worried and hence had moved away from the pride to wait for my return with eagerness and concern. I flashed a smile. "I won, that's what happened," I said as the two lionesses walked around me to check my wounds. "What are these?" Zuri asked as she licked where they stitched my wounds. "Something the humans gave me to help heal my wounds," I said. Although all my wounds were treated and were stitched up, you could not hide the injuries I had sustained. The rest of my pride probably were not as worried as them. They saw me as their invincible king. I came to their life as a victor who could take on 3 kings by myself. On the other hand, Zee and Nola knew me from when I was a weak cub. Hence, the image of invincibility was not there, so they were always worried. And that's also why I treasured them both. "It must have been a hard battle," Nola said and bit her lips. "How many were they?" I went out expecting 4, but the Central Pride had formed an alliance with the Northern Pride, so my enemies were 6, I said. You should have come back then, not fought them anyway, Z said in a scolding tone. I'm fine, aren't I? I said and pushed them away with my head. I did not want them to tear out the stitches. I know what I am capable of, and 6 lions was just not my limit. The 3 of us walked towards the rest of the Pride. What's for dinner? I asked. I'm expecting something, since I know you 2 work together to hunt. Buffalo, Nolla said immediately. I paused, surprise shaking my pupils. You hunted a buffalo? You know hunting those beasts without my presence is dangerous. Ah, it was Z's idea, Nolla said once more immediately. Nolla. I turned to look at Z with a frown. She nervously looked away, her face colored in embarrassment. I wanted to hunt something impressive for you. And don't act so tough. She huffed. We both did something dangerous, so we will forgive each other. I laughed at the arrogance of these bitches. But hey, love had brought me down to their level. I couldn't even get mad. Okay, we will call it equal, I said. She smiled afterwards. When we reached the Pride, there was indeed a buffalo carcass in the middle. It was a female, so not as big as a bull. But that should be enough to feed the whole Pride tonight and for me to eat as much as I wanted. The carcass remained untouched until I ate first. The Pride's location had also changed since the buffalo was too heavy to drag back. I made a beeline to the carcass and dug in immediately. That's not all. I pulled Nolla along with me and put her under me. I mounted her while I ate. When she gave out, I pulled in another female and enjoyed every bit of it. There was nothing quite like a victory meal and sex. And if I can fight 6 lions at the same time, I can do both pleasures at the same time. The cleanup was over. The Serengeti was wholly mine once more. First POV, 3 days later. The only reason you guys are scavengers is because of the competition with other predators. You are more than capable of hunting your own prey. I've seen you hunting prey, I said in front of the hyena audience. There were around 50 of them gathering in front of me. It was weird, honestly, because my intrusive thought was to dive in their midst and commit genocide. But here I was, ordering them like a king, and they listened to me like their king. Well, given the evidence with Skra, I knew they could be ruled by a lion king, so I was not really opposed to the idea. My land is vast, and there will not be any other pride in the Serengeti. So the land has no competition from lions, so there will be more than enough prey. You can hunt as you want. And if a powerful coalition ever appears, your job is to inform me and I will deal with them. Is that clear? I asked. They all nodded their heads dumbly. But you have a certain job too, and that is to keep other hyenas away from my territory. I don't want any dirty hyenas to roam my kingdom except those that are loyal to me. If a foreign clan comes and they are unwilling to come under my rule, kill them, chase them away, I said. And you must also be ready to respond to my summons whenever or wherever and follow my command. Is that understood? They nodded once more. Great. Now I have a hyena army under me, which I can call upon whenever I find myself in trouble. But just to make sure, is there any hyena here who came from the Pride Lands? A lion that once lived under Skra's rule? I asked. The said hyenas immediately tried to hide timidly while the others looked at them. Good, now kill them, I said. All hell broke loose immediately as the swarm attacked the 4 or 5 hyenas that were originally under Skra. Yeah, I did not need such hyenas. Their loyalty and my ability to command them were proven as a few minutes later, those hyenas lay dead. Good, now off you go, I said. The hyenas dispersed with laughs and chatter. A pride of more than 30 members, an army of hyenas, an army of vultures, human doctors, and I was a powerful lion that could kill other lions with ease. I'm honestly getting too OP. Someone stop me before I take over the world for shits and giggles. Remarkable performance, my lord, Grim, who was standing beside me, said after the hyenas dispersed, who knows where. You think so? Absolutely. Your last order also showed proof of their loyalty. They were more than willing to kill a member of their own clan, he said. Thank you, I said with a bow. I turned around to end my patrol. We moved to the central Serengeti yesterday, and just like I predicted, no other lion pride could be found. Scarface and Baraka should already be back where they belonged at this point. Finally, it was back to having an easy life. After 3 days, my injuries were also healing up nicely. It was only the beginning of the recovery, but there was no sign of permanent injury. Perhaps there would be 6 scars remaining by the end. But the stitches made sure there wouldn't be ugly scars where fur wouldn't grow or something like that. Perhaps I can also ask the hyenas to kill rogue lions when the dry season hits again. That way I would have much an easier load on my shoulder, I said thoughtfully as I walked. Splendid, my lord, he said. If they can't deal with a clan of hyenas, they aren't worthy to fight you. Exactly, I said. I was still in recovery, so I did not patrol far. In just half an hour I reached my pride. They lay in the open grass, covering a big area because my pride was that big. There were leftover carcasses here and there, which the vultures could enjoy anytime. I went and lay next to Esh and Sarabi. It's good to have you back, my lord. I suppose there were no intruders? Esh asked while she immediately went to grooming me. No. But I still want us to move to the northern region to check if there are any other lion prides hiding there, I answered. My mother joined her in grooming me. After a lion matures, the relationship between a mother and son comes to an end. We were acting more like a lion and his females. Just to keep the record straight, I did not mate with her. And I don't think I would mate with her even if she begged for it when she came into heat. My seed was too precious and females too plentiful. I wanted to put effort on the fertile ones instead. Speaking of which, I took a deep whiff of the air. The pleasant scent of females immediately penetrated my nose. The females were coming into heat with the abundance of food. Perhaps more than 10 would be ready to breed in just a few weeks. And also, my eyes tracked one scent in particular, and the scent came from a beautiful lioness behind. The lioness being my queen. I licked my lips while looking at Z. The task of a king never ended, and the upcoming task I would very much like to fulfill. And that was to breed endlessly and finally pop out little Leos into the world. The pride was in need of cubs. There were basically no more cubs in the pride. The youngest group were already 8 months old or so. So let's enter the Playboy arc. 1 week later, please, let's stop the Playboy arc. Mating was fun, but after 1,000 or so times, it becomes torture. This just might be my hardest battle yet. Massage it. Don't try to get me erect anymore. I scolded the females licking my balls when they tried to come up and basically give me what was a lion version of a blowjob. How many times have I done it today? I lost count after 100. Male lions are known to have exceptional libido. They can mate on average 40 to 50 times a day. Of course, I easily doubled that, but managing 20 plus females was still extremely difficult. 16 females. That was the number of females currently in heat. And I think the heat season was spreading like a contagious disease because more and more people were coming into heat. Those that weren't were also still asking for some action. And lionesses in heat were especially demanding. At this point, I was wishing for Shadow Clone Jutsu to multiply myself. Truly, I was suffering from success. By this point my injuries were mostly healed, especially simple claw marks or shallow bites. The only wounds left to heal were the deeper and grievous ones. But while I was contemplating my poor fate and getting a massage by 3 females after a fruitful day, I sensed a danger approaching. My instincts came alive, warning me of dread. I have not felt so threatened in a long time. I looked around and saw the danger immediately. Oh no, I mouthed as I locked eyes with the danger. Z was walking up to me. Her gait was slow, and her tail was wagging side to side as if to fan the wonderful scent coming off her lower lips towards me. Z was one of the females who was finally coming to their first heat. She had been a slow flower to bloom due to inexperience, but it seemed the time had finally come. Leave, I said while lightly kicking the females. They moaned in protest, not wanting to leave my member, so I became forceful. I was lying on my back and exposing my belly, so I rolled over. I growled. I said leave. I ordered once more. The females looked around and saw Z approaching. They immediately got the clue, so they excused themselves. By this point, they all knew Tala, Z, and Nola were by far my favorites in the pride. Hello Z, a good night, isn't it? I greeted her when she reached me and stood over me. She was so much smaller than me, but she seemed like she was towering over me. Yes, It's a full moon tonight, she said and briefly glanced towards the clear sky. The night was usually cloudy and rainy, but not tonight. Are you tired? Did I come at the wrong time? She asked first. I could clearly smell her prepared smell and the sheer heat coming off her body. I was mesmerized for a moment. Maybe I should come back some other night, she said, her voice getting a bit shy at the implication. Oh. What a breath of fresh air. After a week of tolerating females who only wanted one thing, it felt pleasant to find a female who considered my feelings first. Not at all. I already sent the others away. Come lie beside me, I said, and she did. She lay beside me, but her posture was way low. She was almost groveling, and her butt was raised a tad bit higher and twitching. Even though she cared for me, her body was literally begging for one thing. I guess we can be expecting new members soon. At the rate you are going, it wouldn't be long before one of the females gets pregnant, she said. I hope so, I said. If not, then my suffering would be meaningless. How are your injuries? She asked. They are healing up nicely. I should be fully healed in a month, I said. There was a silence as she snuggled closer to me. She took a greedy sniff of my musk, although she tried her best to hide it. She was in a constant state of rubbing herself on me. I did not know what it was like to be in heat, but I knew it was intense from the way she was reacting unconsciously. Are you tired? She asked again. I grinned from ear to ear. Oh, how long have I been waiting for this? I wanted this to happen ever since I met her again. I took a brief glance at her figure, lean and of the right shape. Ziri was not the type of lioness to bulk easily. She had a very curvy figure with long limbs, wide hips and all. After abundant food, she had developed her skinny frame into one of the most attractive in the pride. She looked like a bigger cheetah, if you can imagine that. She carried more fat on her thighs and butt than she did on her belly. Why do you want to know that? Do you have a task for me? I asked. Well. Her face colored, her body trembling lightly due to embarrassment. Lions were animals, and usually animals were not shy or concerned at all about mating. But due to growing up with me, she had developed far more than other lions did. She was like me, especially since I basically groomed her about the importance of mating so that she wouldn't cheat on me when I was gone. Just say what you want from me, Z. I will do anything, I said. Seeing her shyness was working to make me erect even more than multiple females licking would. You're so cruel. You always tease me, she said and pulled up her chest with a huff. She began moving closer to me. She snuck her head under my armpits and began snuggling inside. When her head popped back up under me, she gazed up. Can you mate with me too? She asked. No, pleaded almost. It was like my body was conserving energy and semen just for her. Power literally coursed through my veins as I almost exploded. I rubbed my nose on hers and licked her fur. Then I slowly pulled her under me, shifting my hind legs over her so that I could mount. She wiggled restlessly, her tail going to the side to lay her puffy lips bare. I bit her on the scruff with a grunt and I mounted her. I've waited so long, I said and sheathed myself in her roughly. Her body wobbled, her mouth opening wide at the feeling of being stuffed suddenly. Her breathing became ragged and she whispered out growls. Why did you make me wait so long? I asked and tried thrusting. But I stopped halfway because I could not pull out at all. She was clamping down so tightly that it felt like she was going to rip me off. I had to position myself better and use my hind legs to pull myself out. She felt no pain because she was so aroused. Pain felt like pleasure in that moment. She was a virgin, and taking a lion so much bigger than what a lion should be took a toll on her. But she didn't even notice. You know I love you, right? I asked. Why yes, she answered. She squirmed, desperately trying to crawl back and insert again. Good, I said, because what I was about to do to her might not seem like what you would do to someone. I began thrusting then. I thrust so hard I made a dent on the damp earth. Her claws came out and dug into the dirt as I unleashed everything I had on her. She was like a toy I could play with however I liked. If the queen was in heat, everyone could wait while I satisfied her. She would have me as much as she could take first. We mated for the whole night without getting a wink of sleep. There was not a moment where I came out fully. I plugged her inside with my member even while resting. The image I had in my mind always made me excited whenever I thought I was done. Said image being her perfect curving figure ruined by a swollen belly. I wanted to impregnate her so badly. I focused on that sole purpose. I wanted her to bear my first cubs. The effort I gave into that farce surpassed the effort I gave even in my last fight. I didn't let her escape even when she tried. My whole weight trapped her like a mountain. She got more than she bargained for. "You're mine," I said. Indeed, on that beautiful full moon, I finally marked her body as mine. I wanted to bury my scent into her, ruin her forever for any other lion. She was truly mine. Third POV. The Joe Rogan Podcast. On that day, the JRE podcast episode featured Andrew Dice Clay, a fellow stand-up comedian like Joe Rogan. The two friends had known each other for quite a while, staying close, so he was not really an unknown guest. The conversation began and started off smoothly. You could tell from their chemistry that they were both friends. There were no awkward moments to be found, like it was for other guests. Both were comedians, so their talk was filled with jokes and jabs about politics, people, fighters, and even countries. It was turning out to be a splendid episode. Although these factors helped, they were not the reason why this specific episode would go viral. Andrew Dice Clay was a popular stand-up comedian, but nowhere near global fame like Adam Sandler or something. But the reason why this episode and clips of it would go viral was because of their discussion an hour into the episode. "Hey, did you watch the documentary about that lion? What was it called again, Leo?" Andrew asked while smoking a blunt with one hand. His face had a permanent smile at this point. "Of course," Joe Rogan said like it was obvious. "Everyone watches that. The lion's a superstar." "I'm wondering, can you really call that a documentary? Whenever I watch that show, I always get the feeling that I'm watching a movie and the lion is the superstar. But the show insists that it is a documentary." What happened in the latest episodes? The lion waged war against crocodiles. Like, what the hell is that? Do they expect us to believe that shit and that it's not some different clips edited to imitate a story they want to tell? Andrew said, slaying other lions like he's the lion slayer or something. He goes wandering around the savannah, one-shotting every lion he can find like he is some bounty hunter in an old cowboy movie. It's ridiculous. Joe Rogan fixed his posture to answer. He folded his arms and leaned forward. His body language was not open anymore but guarded. It was subtle but obvious for a martial artist like him. He was ready to defend something. Well, it's a show made from real-life events that actually happened. The things on that show are all the truths, no matter how outlandish it gets. So yes, in that way, it is totally a documentary, Joe said. Really? Everything about that show is real and nothing is made up or exaggerated. Andrew curled his fingers when he said the word real. Of course, Joe answered simply. Come on, Joe. Andrew said in disbelief. Don't do that, Joe said with a sigh. Don't try that shit on me, Andrew. You're going to start sounding like those people who still think the earth is flat or those that do not believe dinosaurs exist, although there is plenty of proof saying otherwise. You really think there's a dark-maned lion almost triple the size of other lions, hunting down buffalo or some shit and waging war with crocodiles? Andrew asked. Yes, Joe answered. Really? Yes. Really? Yes. Why? Because I've seen him, Joe answered with a serious nod. A pause. Really? Yes. When? A few years ago, I think. When he was really in his prime and had not fallen off as hard as he did now, Joe Rogan said. Okay, then tell me about it, Andrew asked, his attention fully captured. I shouldn't. With the ongoing show and all that, I shouldn't really reveal anything, Joe said. But if your mind is already blown to disbelief by what has gone on so far, wait till you see the new episodes. Wait till he goes out of the Serengeti and even comes back, Joe said with a knowing smile. How do you know all this? Andrew asked, What's your secret? Well, I have been fortunate enough to have friends who are working closely on this case. And I came to know about Leo years ago, in the early time frame when he hunts down a buffalo, I think. I knew about that when it happened from my friend Forrest Galanti, he said. Can't you say anything? Anything at all? Even little bits and pieces? I would totally believe it coming from you, Andrew probed curiously. Well. Joe sighed. Spoiler alert, when I met him, Leo weighed around half a ton. A cat that weighs half a ton, Andrew deadpanned. That's what it was. Meeting him was single-handedly the most extraordinary thing that happened in my life. The impact he had on me was much more than even when I got married or even when I held my first child, he said. It was kind of like enlightenment, where I realized how much less we are. His head alone was the size of me, Andrew. I kid you not. His height while standing on 4 was so much taller, and when he stood against a tree, it was like seeing a Godzilla in real life. No, yes, it was. The sheer presence he had even 100 meters away was undeniable. It was like all your little animal instincts inside your body wanted to flee. It wanted to do nothing but pass out so that the possible pain inflicted could be avoided. You become this small, tiny creature in front of him. I think I lost all human arrogance back then. Because just seeing him from a distance felt like you were looking at God. That's the best way you can describe it. When you are in his vicinity, you're absolutely aware that the only reason you are breathing is because he allows it so, Joe retold about his experience. What were you doing there anyway? Did you go just to look? No. The researchers went there to study, I think, the 4th generation of his cubs, and I got the opportunity to tag along, Joe said. They went to study his cubs. Yeah. Why? Andrew asked with a quizzical look. Well, unfortunately for nature, the offspring of Leo inherited the trait that made Leo so special. It is a much diluted version, but still enough for his cubs to absolutely dominate the continent wherever they go, Joe said. So they're as big as him. No, but they are still big. They have the average size of ligers, a mix of lions and tigers that were these huge cats that are thought to not be able to survive in the wild due to their sheer size, Joe answered. They called them Panthera titaneus, a subspecies of the Panthera leo, otherwise known as the African lion. The scientists expected them to be the ancestors of a new species entirely and claimed to have witnessed evolution in real time. Wow, you even know their scientific names, Andrew said. Yes, I've been obsessed for years now, Joe Rogan admitted with a smile. For example, the Siberian tigers are bigger subspecies of the Panthera tigris, normal tigers. So it's kind of like that case for them. Interesting, Andrew said. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, Joe said. So is the rumor about him eventually killing rhinos and hippos true? Andrew asked. Absolutely. 100%, Joe said. Do you think he can defeat an elephant? Andrew asked. Well. Joe took a long pause. I want to say no. But the thing about Leo is that he is very intelligent. If early humans could kill mammoths using strategy and a bunch of sharp sticks, then I believe Leo could do the same. Really? Yes. But that would never happen. The bull elephants and Leo kind of avoid each other, you know. Meanwhile, he has a very complicated yet good relationship with the female herds. Like the vultures. Not exactly, but... Joe sighed and laughed. I'm going to say too much. Come on, Joe. No, if I say too much, they wouldn't tell me stuff anymore. I don't want that, Joe said. Bummer, Andrew said while putting out his blunt finally. Then is the thing about Mr. Beast wanting to make a video about him real. He has been trying for years now but never got the green flag. Like I said, they are very secretive when it comes to him. He is special, Joe said. Speaking about him made me want to watch the episodes again, Andrew said. Well, we can watch clips. Hey Jamie, can you pull up clips of the last episode real quick? Anything would do. Thank you, Joe said and turned towards the big screen in the studio. Watch this. This is crazy, Joe said with a grin. And so, the next good chunk of the podcast was spent discussing the topics of Leo. First POV, 1 month later, I've really done it. I got them pregnant. It has been a month already since the Playboy arc, and many females are experiencing a change in hormones and are no longer coming into heat. There were 4 lionesses who experienced such changes. It was the early signs of pregnancy. These females are Zee, Nola, Tala, and, strangely enough, the older lioness Amora. I expected the first 3 lionesses because I spent the most time with them and they were my favorites. But luck had also gotten Amora. You should have seen her smug and proud face when she realized she was pregnant. After more than a month, my injuries were already healed as well. There were scars all over my body. They were bigger than I would have liked but would probably fade over time. I had been active for a week now, and more active than I had ever been, to be honest. Not only did my patrol range increase, but I was consistent in hunting down prey too. I was going to be a father. And I think that knowledge ignited some primal instinct in me. The researchers were very interested in the topic of pregnancy as well. The number of humans monitoring us increased subtly. It was obvious because now there were 2 vehicles constantly parked in our vicinity, although that didn't last for long. I displayed a clear sign of dislike towards the second Jeep and the new humans it contained. I did not want to be treated like some specimen or circus clown to watch. So now there was only one group of researchers. The original crew. Those were the only ones I wanted to keep around me. The sun was already nearing its height in the sky by the time I returned from my early patrol. My body had stains of blood from one rogue I tracked down and killed. He was running from me, so it took the whole morning to catch him, even with Grimm's help in the sky. I reached the human researchers before I reached my pride. But something was off that day because Dr. Tun-sun was out of the vehicle and came towards me. "Hey Leo." He called out with a wave to get my attention. I stopped and turned to look at him and at the thing he had in his hands. "Look what I have here," he said, and on his right hand was a piece of meat. I deadpanned. What the hell were they up to? "See this? See this? Look at this," he said and put the meat on the ground before moving away. I turned direction and headed towards him out of sheer curiosity. When I got closer, I could see other pieces of meat on the ground. They formed a path leading to a place beside where they parked their vehicle. I deadpanned even harder. The setup was straight out of a cartoon. I knew immediately that they were trying to lure me somewhere. I lowered my head to sniff at the meat and quickly realized that it was the meat of a warthog. That made me pause to process their sheer ignorance. Here I was, dining on premium buffalo meat whenever I wanted, and they tried to lure me with what? A pig's meat? That was like trying to invite Gordon Ramsay to your home with the proposal of making instant cup noodles. No. Dr. Tun-sun almost shrank when I turned to him without even touching the meat. He reached inside his pocket and took out a protein bar, which he quickly unwrapped and showed to me. "You want this?" he asked once more, and this time, I was interested. Protein bars or human foods in general were something I could not get when I wanted. Although buffalo meat was still better even as a source of protein, I valued their rarity. He held his hand high when I walked close to him and I ate the bar from his hand. My mouth was the same level as his head. I told them this would work better. They didn't listen, he said and took out another bar. But this time, he did not give it to me and instead used that as a lure. He led me to where he wanted and I followed behind him after contemplating. When we reached beside the car, I finally saw the weird platform they had on the ground. After a few seconds, I realized that it was a platform scale. The scale was set atop another platform they made so that the uneven ground would not interfere with the measurement. They wanted to weigh me. I looked around and there were 5 other researchers, some in the vehicle, whereas Ramirez and Hannah were beside the scale. The man had his camera out to capture every moment. On the scale there were organs. I suppose those were the same organs of the warthog and they were hoping I could climb on the scale to eat that. It was a silly plan. Quite cute if I was being honest. I walked to the scale and quickly inhaled the oranges without climbing on the scale. Ramirez groaned, "I told you we should have fixed the meat on a pole or something." But little did they know, they don't need to do all this. I was infinitely curious to know my exact weight and size as well. So after I cleaned the scale off the organs, I stepped up. There was a small screen at the edge of the scale. The platform itself was big, but I still had to curl my body to fit there. Everyone gawked and celebrated when they saw me climb on the scale. We all looked at the numbers shown. 442.7 kilograms, Hannah read out loud. She released a shaky laugh. "That's nearly half a ton." I tilted my head in wonder too. He has not grown as much compared to previous months. His body had to heal instead of growing after all, Dr. Tunsun concluded. But I suppose he would definitely hit or maybe surpass half a ton, he added afterwards. The humans on the vehicle were jotting down everything on a notebook they had in hand. Thank you, my lord, Dr. Tunsun said and threw the bar at me. I caught it with a snap of my jaw, my movement causing everyone to flinch back. I climbed off the scale and headed back to my pride afterwards. The humans were busy with their new discovery, so I left them be. The scent of females wafted over my nose when I reached the pride. Although 4 were pregnant, there were still many females hoping to get pregnant too. Here we go again. Third POV, the females are pregnant. A researcher walked in on the large tent of the main station. She held with her test results written down on paper. The humans had been tracking in any way they could the health of Leo and his pride. This was possible because the crew, the special crew as they were now referred to, was tolerated by the pride. They could get research materials without having to tranquilize or use any other force. The lions had seen them as a part of their pride, almost like the vultures perhaps. Him? Give that to me, Dr. Tunsun asked, his study glass on his face. Dr. Tunsun and some other researchers were busy making a new profile for Leo at his current stage. They had his exact height and weight measurement, also getting the hormone level, his genetic material and all that stuff. They even had his semen to study, and to be truthfully honest, the thought of impregnating a lioness in hopes of studying his offspring came to mind. Dr. Tunsun took the paper and carefully read it through for a few seconds. He took his glasses with a chuckle. The man really did it. We thought the chance of pregnancy would be low since he has so many females and has the habit of spreading his affection instead of choosing heavy favorites. Emmanuel took the paper and read through it briefly. Those seed strong like him, I guess. This provides us the perfect opportunity to study in depth what makes Leo special. Will the offspring inherit his genes? If they did, this could be big in finally realizing what makes Leo, well, Leo, Dr. Tunsun said. For sure, Emmanuel agreed. Thank you, sweetheart. Do try to pinpoint who these pregnant females are and make sure you track their pregnancy closely, Dr. Tunsun said while handing back the papers to the researcher. Emmanuel returned back to his seat and sat down. He leaned back on his chair and put his feet on the table. But he did not return back to his work. Instead, he stared off at the empty space thoughtfully. For a few minutes there was silence. Dr. Tunsun returned back to his work but noticed Emmanuel's weird behavior. When Dr. Emmanuel took out cigarettes and started smoking, he finally turned and asked, "Anything wrong?" "Me? Nothing. Nothing's wrong, Dr. Emmanuel said and took a long drag of his cig before blowing the smoke at the old man's face. "What do you think? It's my thing to smoke when I'm stressed." "Of course there is something wrong," Emmanuel said. "Well, it will be helpful if you share what bothers you so." "Poachers, Dr. Emmanuel said without missing a beat. "Poachers. The rangers have caught some, but there are signs that more are still out there. And if Leo were to have cubs, you think they will try to steal the cubs?" Dr. Tunsun asked. "Although we try, Leo's existence is not actually a secret anymore. Many people, especially those in animal fields, know about him and his significance. Chances are, it is not just us that are interested in his cubs, Dr. Emmanuel said. "You really think so?" "Some Dubai prince who has nothing better to do with his money would spend a fortune," Dr. Emmanuel said. "The problem is that Leo wouldn't allow more of us to be stationed near or even close to him. It's hard to keep security in that case." Dr. Tunsun remained quiet but thoughtful as well. If Leo keeps going, with the number of females, he would have near hundreds of cubs. Not far-fetched that some would get lost, right? That's too many assumptions. "Well, assumption is kind of my thing. I even write shit stories in my free time, remember," he said. Dr. Tunsun chuckled. "Hopefully, no one does anything stupid, Dr. Emmanuel laughed hard. First POV, 1 month later. It has been 2 months since I demolished the 4 musketeers turned 6. At this point, even their shadow had disappeared. There was not even a whisper of their name in my kingdom anymore. The wet season was also at its end. The gigantic herds of zebras, wildebeest, and even antelopes had migrated to the Marsari Mara. A part of me really wanted to follow them and check the land on the other side of the river. But the land probably had its own kings and shit, meaning more chores for me. I did not want that. I did not find that exciting. At least not yet. At this stage of my life, I was dedicated to being a king and a father. Being a father was something I had never experienced before in my past life. Some animals might just be content with seeding and leaving everything to the lionesses, but I was not like other animals. This was huge for me. It has been nearly 2 months since they got pregnant, meaning we were at the halfway point in the pregnancy. Lion pregnancy lasts between 3 and 4 months, much quicker than that of humans. So the cubs were coming soon, and I was preparing in any way I could. The pride had stopped its nomadic ways in favor of the pregnant mothers. I did not want them to move too much. Growing cubs inside them was already taking a toll. For this, I picked the best area in the central Serengeti where we would live. It was in the central Serengeti, touching the northern region. This place had a lake that never ran out even in the dry season, and hence, it was also filled with giant prey that did not migrate. Buffaloes, rhinos, giraffes, and elephants. And the hippos shared the lake with the crocodiles too. It was the boiling point of life in the Serengeti. It was the perfect place to welcome the cubs. At least that's what I thought. The hyenas had been extremely useful in keeping my territory. They were allowed to unleash their hatred for lions on all the rogues that came. So although I was stationed in one place now and limited patrols, my kingdom was still untouched by frauds. It was the right decision to keep them around. They took the burden off my shoulders that would have made me basically an absent father. My lord, Esh nudged me slightly to bring me out of my reverie. I shook my head and came back to reality. The whole pride was surrounding me and waiting patiently for me to begin the feast. In front of me was a dead buffalo, brought down by a hunting party that consisted of 14 lionesses. It was yet again a successful hunt of a giant without my interference. The hunters were quite proud. "Thank you for your hard work," I thanked the pride before I dug into the meal. My jaw ripped open the belly, tearing away muscle and fat of the buffalo just like that. A deep smell of fresh meat and warm blood penetrated my nose, instinctively activating the instincts inside as I began pulling out the organs and eating them. I bit down on a huge chunk of liver but did not swallow this time. Instead, I spat the liver to the side where Kovu stayed in waiting. His ears perked up and he ate the piece of liver beside me. That was his reward from his success yesterday. He had grown much from last time, and the fact that he was male was starting to show as he blitzed past his female siblings when it came to development. He was nearly a year old now. He was bigger than a leopard at this stage. After I ate the organ and lapped at the thick black blood, I pulled off the skin of the buffalo and enjoyed the meaty parts on its neck and shoulder. When I had my fill, the rest of the pride joined in the meal. They came in hierarchy. The pregnant females ate first, followed by the hunting parties. Finally, the rest of the pride. Meals were frequent in our pride, so no lions ate too much. The giant was enough to feed the whole pride. My desire for growth was rekindled by the frequent visits of the humans with their scale. Last time I weighed there, I had reached 450 kilograms. But that was because I ate a huge meal the previous night. But even still, getting to see my progress helped in motivating me to eat and grow even more. I wanted to be disgustingly big. I think I was getting the bodybuilder mindset. I wanted to freak out an elephant by my sheer size. Which seemed unthinkable, but hey, the higher you aim, the higher you fail, right? After eating the meal, I spent the whole day with the pride. I mated with the females, as that had become routine. I played with the new cubs, growing awfully fond of them at this point. Perhaps it was the father instinct. When afternoon rolled around, I headed out to patrol. My patrolling area had grown bigger and hence took more time. There was something primal screaming at me. I was more protective than ever. Although I had received no report of intruders from Grimm, it was still mandatory to patrol. Because at this point, it was not just other lions that I had to be wary of. In the dry season, when every animal was alerted and at their peak of primal instinct, they were very aggressive. An hour into my patrol and I found one such danger. What's he doing here so close to my pride? I asked out loud while staring into the far distance. My target was noticeable even from afar. He stood out more than every creature in the Serengeti. A male rhino. Prime age if his gigantic horns were anything to go by. He was huge, in a way that literally shook the earth every time he ran. After a second of contemplation, I made my way to the rhino. He was in an open plain. Around him were tall stalks of yellow grass, but his area was wide open because he had stamped those grasses to the ground. He was easy to spot in that manner. Upon close inspection and observation, I realized that his appearance here had nothing to do with being close to my pride. No. The rhino was staying close to the lake instead. My pride was also situated where water should be easy to access. Hence, we were neighbors. Grim flew down in front of me. I stopped my approach. The rhino decided to make a territory here near the lake. Water is harsh and hence, he's going to be very territorial about it, Grim said. Is he? Yes, and if you approach more, you will enter his marked territory, Grim warned while looking straight at my eyes. Is that how he marks his territory? I said and gestured with my head towards my side. Grim looked and saw what I already smelled. It was a huge mound of shit. It was literally around 3 meters wide. The mound of shit was so massive it was easy to mistake it for a termite mound from above. The rhino literally took shits bigger than himself. It was disgustingly impressive. I suppose that is a way to mark his territory, Grim said, completely off guard by the pile of shit. Goddamn, how long did he take to make that? Grim said, aghast, I swear that was not there yesterday. I chuckled and took a step forward. I walked past Grim, who hurriedly waddled in front of me once more to stop me. Please, my lord, these things are not to be messed with. I frowned. Grim, if he is that aggressive, then it is all the more reason for me to remove him. They threaten the safety of my pride. Remove? Please, my lord. Not to doubt that rhinos are immovable objects. Everyone knows that. When they mark a territory, they stay there. We could instead move the pride somewhere that doesn't pass through his territory to access the lake, Grim said. I was surprised at his warning and doubt, but also strangely disappointed. You want me to compromise in my own kingdom? I asked. He doesn't know that. For all he cares, that part of the land is his now, Grim said. And I'm going to tell him no. Kindly, of course. I will just ask him to move somewhere else, far away from my pride and coming cubs, I said. Don't stop me. Grim finally relented and made way for me. Rhinos were endangered animals. They were not like buffaloes that are in the 10,000s. Perhaps there would be less than 100 rhinos in the whole expanse of the Serengeti. Hence, I rarely ran into one, much less had trouble with one. This was going to be the first conflict. I continued making my way to the rhino. The gigantic beast quickly took note of my presence. He was pissing in a line, making lines on the earth with his horns to mark his territory. But then he stopped and turned his bulldozer head towards me. I didn't stop even when he slowly turned his whole body towards me. Immovable object. Huh? What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Perhaps we would find out now. I roared. This is my kingdom. Every creature on this earth needs to know that. First POV, I roared. It was a shattering roar that echoed through the open plain. A herd of buffalo would have lost their balls and run had they heard it. The creatures in the surroundings got alerted, with some rabbits and rodents running back to their holes immediately. The blowing wind caused the roar to reverberate throughout the land. But the rhino did not react. His gigantic ears twitched at the sound like it was nothing more than a bother. Then he huffed loudly. It was like that of a horse, only deeper and savage in a way that made you tremble. Nothing? Okay, I said to myself as I continued to approach the beast. The closer I got to the rhino, the more I observed, and the more I observed, the more freaked out I got. The rhino was not big, not by appearance at least. He was around 5.10 feet at his highest point, and he was around 12 feet in length. He was big, but not ridiculously so. If we compared dimensions, he was slightly smaller. But it was when I got near that I figured out how much more massive he was. It was like a magical warning. I could feel his sheer weight pulsating through the ground. He was not wide, tall, nor long, but he was compact. Ridiculously compact. In a shared space where I occupy around 450 kilograms, he managed to fit in around 1,500 kilograms. In a smaller dimension, He was 3 times my mass. He was built like a living tank. A thing that was meant to stop and stay there. A true immovable object. The rhino was blackish in color. That told me that he was a black rhinoceros, a smaller species compared to their almost extinct white rhinoceros. For reference, I suspect this big boy weighs around 1,500 kilograms or higher, but white rhinoceroses at 2,000 kilograms were considered very small. A white rhinoceros, male and at his prime, always surpassed 2,500 kilograms. That was why they were considered the second living beast. The rhino that stood before me was a black rhino, luckily. The smaller and weaker version of its counterpart. I could deal with this. I think the buffalo were around 3 times my mass when I first hunted them down and became successful. I stopped when there was a good 20 meters between us. He was shoving his head up in the air, displaying his long horns in a show of dominance. I peeled back my lips and revealed my inches too. My claws came out and raked the earth to display the kind of violence I could cross. The rhino stomped on the ground, each stomp sending vibrations through the earth. He took 3 steps forward and drew a line on the earth with his horns. He took a few steps back and stomped once more. He shook his bulbous head and huffed loudly. The body language was clear. That was a show of dominance. I could not cross the line that he had made. Crossing that line would be akin to declaring war. I growled deeply. Imagine the audacity to draw your own territory in front of the king. I approached the line. He pushed himself up with his front limbs to do a double stomp. He began plowing the ground with his horns and did all kinds of things to scare me away from the line. But I continued the approach, and eventually crossed that sacred line. "You asked for it," he bellowed and charged at me. My body came alive. My heart became a beating drum in my chest as adrenaline pumped in my system. A body that had not faced hard battle for 2 months now prepared for such battle. I've never felt so alive. The charging beast was a reminder that I was alive. And it was because I was alive that I was scared. The rhino bowed his head low, and when he reached me, he threw his head up to stab me with his vertical horn. But he never even came close, for the rhino was slow. He was slower than even a buffalo. All that mass dragged him down. He had absolutely no speed. I moved to the side, dodging his charge. He tried to stop when he missed me, but that took a long time. I just stood there and watched. The rhino ran more distance and even crossed his own line. He slowed down and eventually came to a hard stop. I was deadpanning while looking at his sluggish movement. He then took even longer to completely turn his body. When he faced me once more, steam came out from his nose and he stomped the earth with his feet. Then he charged at me again. The same thing followed as I easily sidestepped to the side and dodged his charge. I had enough time to piss when he slowed down and came to a stop. When he was turning his huge weight once more, I decided to attack too. I exploded with fury. I was not like his slow self. I was fast and quickly gaining momentum. When he was half done with his turn and exposed his side, I crashed into him. Boom! I crashed hard. I released a painful scream while staggering back and falling on my butt. The rhino, on the other hand, staggered to the side, but only 3 steps before he regained his balance. His heavy weight and low center of gravity made it almost impossible to flip him over, unlike the giants like a giraffe. I crashed into him but ended up more hurt. It was comical how this fight was turning out. The rhino charged at me while I was on the ground. But again, I still had plenty of time to dodge to the side once more. "This is ridiculous," I said to myself. I was too fast for him to ever hit me. On the other hand, he was too thick and armored for me to ever hurt him. We literally just cancelled each other out. There was no room to fight at all. I guess when an unstoppable force met an immovable object, nothing happened. It was the most anticlimactic shit ever. The rhino was bigger than a buffalo, but he was built awkwardly and he was nowhere near as fast and ferocious as the Black Death. On the other hand, it had thick hide and muscle so compact that I could not imagine myself doing damage. I got up to my feet and began contemplating. My body came out of its fight mode as my brain began working more than my body. I jumped to the side and dodged yet another charge coming my way. I continued to think. I dodged 3 more charges while deep in thought. I could dodge his slow-ass charge in my sleep. The thing about the rhino was that not only was he slow but he also had difficulty turning. so his attacking was always limited to a straight line. "You! Stop running away!" the rhino declared with bated breath. All the weight he was carrying gave him short stamina. He was getting tired quickly. "I'm not running away," I said and came up to him. I took him back before he turned fully and stayed there. My front limbs tried to dig into his armored skin but found no purchase. The rhino tried to turn and shake me off, but to no avail. He was extremely slow, so I simply moved along with him and stayed on his back. He could not kick either because he had these short, stubby legs. That made him have excellent balance and a low center of gravity, but he couldn't even kick. "Come in front of me!" the rhino bellowed angrily, but I just ignored him. I was fully focused on examining every inch of his body. I was searching for weakness. My claws came out as I searched for the part of his body where he was the weakest. A long time passed like that. At one point the rhino gave up turning and decided to run. I followed after him by jogging, and when he got tired, I jumped on his back again to find weakness in his armor. "Leave me alone." "Ah," he said. "Tell me if it hurts," I said and raked many lines over his body. I tried biting him, but it was like biting a boulder. My teeth just slipped off without finding any lock. He was round and compact, so my jaw could not find something it could clamp down on. The only damage I did was nicks. At one point, Grim came down and landed on the rhino's back to help me search for weakness. "Try his underbelly, my lord," Grim said. "I can't reach his belly. He is super fat," I said and tried to reach his underbelly. But like I said, he was too thick and round. My limbs could not reach his belly. Then I tried wrestling him to the ground, throwing his body to the side left and right. But his balance was too good. He only stumbled even when I tried to wrestle him down. "Have you tried his balls?" Grim asked. "You think my signature wouldn't be the first thing I tried?" "This beast has no balls," I said. Unlike other mammals, rhinos had their balls inside their bodies. So it was impossible to take advantage of that weakness. Truly, they were designed to be living tanks. The only weakness left is the eyes. But rhinos have worse sight than even buffalo, so that would only slightly cripple them. It was not an effective way to defeat them. Not to mention, I would have to take him by the horns to get to his eyes, I said. I continued my research for a long time. By this point, the rhino was tired and he was huffing and puffing. After he cooled, he simply began grazing. At this point, he seemed to not care anymore. Both of us were bored out of our minds in this fight. But at the end of my hurdle, I finally found success. "Found it," I said and bit down at the back of his neck. The only weakness the rhino had was its fat folds or skin folds. Those were at the moving joints, like his legs or his neck. These had loose skin so that they could move around and not be constricted by the skin. The hide was still as thick, but the loose skin meant that I could at least pull or clamp down on them. The rhino bellowed and began running. I was fully on his back, riding him almost as I bit down hard on his loose skin and thrashed around. After some time, I managed to cut and tear the skin. Blood began flowing out in copious amounts. It seemed these skins were hiding important arteries beneath. The rhino tried to drive me away, but his slow movements meant I could always adjust my position to be in control. In the end, the rhino's only choice was to fall. So he did. The rhino fell to the side suddenly. The action caught me completely off guard and my limbs were trapped between his weight and the earth. Now I was trapped. Shit. Why does fighting you suck this much? I bellowed when I felt my limbs being crushed. Nothing was broken or would be broken, but it still hurts. I continued biting while trapped there. I bit at his flapping ear and tore it off the side of his face. The rhino bellowed in pain and squirmed around, crushing my arm even more. I think he was trying to get up, but he was struggling to. Damn this shit. Fighting a rhino is not fun at all. "First poo, release me, you worthless weight," I growled and raked him at his side. I made some lines, but my claws did not penetrate all the way through his 5 centimeters thick hide. The rhino bellowed in pain. The side of his head was bleeding out as I tore off his ears. My paw came up to his face. He thrashed his head around wildly, but there was not much he could do as I gouged out one of his eyes too. The rhino tried his best to roll over, but the panic made him into an erratic beast. But eventually, he managed to get on his side and lie straight. I slipped my limbs out from under his weight, and I immediately pulled him so that he lay on his side again, but this time without crushing me. I leapt over his body and then immediately attacked his side. Just like I had predicted, his underbelly was his vulnerable part. My jaw immediately dug into soft flesh. The hide was still there, but it was much thicker and not as armored. I continued pushing him so that he never had the ability to get back up again. I attacked his underbelly. My claws found purchase and tore open, and my jaw too bit off chunks of skin until his softer tissue was revealed. Blood began to flow out. Yes, the blood of a rhino. My instinct came alive when I tasted blood and I became more brutal and ruthless. But the rhino in his panic executed a wonderful escape. He used my push as a way to get up. He stopped trying to resist me and rolled with my push. He rolled over and he got up from the opposite side. When he stood up with staggers, blood began falling down like rain underneath him. He was enraged. His remaining eye dilated in sheer rage as he charged at me. We were nearly at point-blank range, so I had no time to dodge this time. I slipped his tall horn between my arms, evading a vital hit that could stab me, but his charge hit. He ragdolled me. It felt like I was a beast filled with not muscle but feathers as he pushed me. My hind legs created 2 lines on the earth as I tried and resisted his strength. It was useless to try and compete with him in strength. I roared and jumped with my hind legs. Then I easily climbed over his length and jumped down from behind him. When he passed me, he made a slow turn once more. I exploded when his open side was revealed. This time, I did not try and crash on him like I did before, but instead landed on him like I was pushing off a tree. I leapt at him. Paws first. I landed on his heavy body and I pushed myself off again. That way, I was not crashing, but I was using him more like the immovable object he was, like making a turn on a giant boulder. He staggered back due to the momentum and I quickly followed with a second one. This time, he staggered and he missed his steps. He had a mighty fall. His weight caused the earth to tremble as he fell on his side again. Great! Now I know how to take down a rhino. I attacked his wounded underbelly. I did not push him like I did last time, but simply held him down. He was like a helpless turtle. His armored hide was hard to penetrate, but with time, I was able to inflict damage. He bellowed loudly as I opened him up. His defenses slowed me down. But so what? He couldn't get up anyway. In the end, the rhino died. He struggled all the way, but eventually, he died due to the loss of blood. Ha, ha, ha. My breath came out ragged and tired. I would be the first to admit that it took everything in me just to kill this thing. It was more difficult than hunting a buffalo, even though those were much more dangerous in my opinion. I guess their defensive strategy was to be durable so that they would never be hunted. Not like buffalo, which were built to fight back so they would not be hunted. If a black rhinoceros was like this, I wished to never encounter a white rhino. Those beasts had actual giant horns, and at my current state, I don't think I could take down one. You did it, Grim said in disbelief as he landed on the corpse. My lord, you actually killed the unkillable, Grim said in pure awe and nigh worship. Yes, I answered while breathing hard, but I never want to do it again. I don't think the damn thing was even edible. I could not imagine any other lion penetrating those thick hides. Now it was just a waste of massive flesh. Neither because the pride was hungry nor because we just had a buffalo feast. I killed an endangered animal for no reason whatsoever. And to be completely honest, I felt quite guilty about that. Compared to the zero remorse I felt when killing other beings, this one I was actually self-conscious. Let's go, Grim, I said and looked at the sun in the sky. It took me more than an hour to kill the beast. It's almost time for me to return from my patrol, and I have barely covered any ground. I headed to the watering hole to cool down and have a drink. Afterwards, I covered a few more grounds to patrol and mark my scent before I headed back to my pride. Third POV. After Leo left, the researchers were the first to come to the site. The humans jumped out of their vehicle and quickly checked whether the rhino was dead or not. But they quickly realized that there was no hope for the massive beast. It was completely dead. No breathing, no pulse, no heartbeat, no nothing. Oh God, Hannah said, her voice shaky and her eyes almost teary. Such a magnificent beast he was, Dr. Tunsun said, full of grief, while he ran his hand along the tough skin of the dead rhino. He traced the marks of lines Leo made with his claws. "I never even imagined this would happen," Dr. Tunsun said. "I didn't think Leo could or would kill a rhino." "We need to stop it. We need to avoid this from happening again," Hannah said in a determined voice. There were barely 100 rhinos in the whole of Serengeti. Such an endangered animal needed protection so that they didn't go extinct. And they didn't want Leo to be the cause of their extinction. "Do you think he would make a habit out of this? Like he did with the buffaloes?" Hannah said with concern. "What if he enjoyed it and does it again? Then we will have to intervene. We will relocate any nearby rhino if we must. But we can't let Leo wipe their species out. Especially now that he knew how to kill them," Dr. Tunsun said, taking off his glasses and carefully examining the wounds on the rhino. It was not hard to tell, but this rhino was killed with careful technique and planning. Leo was intelligent. This hunt would only endow him with knowledge on how to kill them better. "I'll inform the team. We need to get to work right now. Make sure no rhinos make territory near Leo and his pride again," Hannah said. She got up and ran back to the vehicle to make the calls. Dr. Tunsun continued to caress the dead beast. Sweat fell from his forehead and he released a tight sigh. He looked towards where Leo had gone and said small prayers. "May God protect them from the king." First POV, 2 months later. The dry season had passed its peak. During the dry season, I was not swarmed with challengers like in previous years. The hyenas had proven themselves more useful than I could ever have expected. They chased off most rogues without my interference. The only battle I had to fight was against a big coalition of 4 to 5 lions. The lone males never even got the chance to lie low in the Serengeti, as they were quickly chased away by the combined forces of the vultures and the hyenas. The hyenas under me had also increased much. I used to meet some clans in my patrols, and it seemed there were more every week. Grim had reported that the hyenas in the Serengeti had surpassed 200. The dry season had not only gathered challengers but also other predators from the nearby regions, hyenas included. Although not all the hyenas that came wanted to bow under Lion's rule. Grim had been diligent in keeping me updated on all the clashes and the small wars that took place. But fortunately, my hyenas won all wars. In the dry season, they hunted down the remaining smaller prey, for which they had no competition since there were no other lion prides, and my pride mostly ate buffalo meat in the dry season. Speaking of my pride, there was tension in the air. The sun was shining brightly in the mid-sky. I had returned from my patrol, but returning was not as welcoming as before, because pregnancy had reached its peak. Nola, Tala, Z, and Amora were all expecting labor very soon. It was a wonder why they had not given birth already, because usually, a lioness pregnancy lasts between 3 and 4 months. But it had been nearly 5 months and the cubs had not arrived yet. There were 3 other new pregnant lions too, other than these 4. In total, I had gotten 7 lionesses pregnant. The baby-making factory was in full throttle. "How are you feeling?" I asked. I headed towards the 4 pregnant lionesses immediately. These 4 shared a bond as pregnant sisters. You would see them lying together and grooming each other a bit isolated from the pride. There was tension in the air. Everyone in the pride could feel the coming cubs. It was like the whole pride was pregnant. "We are well, my lord," Z answered with a weak smile. A smile that was not really a smile. Everyone seemed a little irritated. Perhaps I had asked that same question so frequently over the weeks. "It's hurting now," Nola commented, her swollen belly showing veins. She was thought to be the one with the most cubs inside her due to the sheer swelling of her belly. The other lionesses all had swollen bellies too. It was to the point that walking had become difficult for them. Either they were all carrying multiple cubs or my cubs were huge. "I think it is time we leave the pride, my lord," Amora suggested, being the only lion who had experience with pregnancy. "You don't need to leave," I shook my head. "I will give you all the protection and care you need right here with the pride." "That is not how it works, my lord," she insisted. "Well, that is how it will work from here on out," I said firmly. "I will not expose any one of you to danger." Usually, when the lionesses felt like they were nearing labor, they would separate from the pride and give birth to their cubs elsewhere. Only after the cubs were big would they search for their pride and rejoin. But surely I would not allow such things to happen. That was an unnecessary risk. The only reason this was instinct and tradition was to protect the vulnerable cubs from the kings. But I was not like those wild animals who would kill their own cubs. I would do nothing but care and be gentle towards the mother or the cubs. Do you need a better spot? If you so desire, I could search for a den or softer ground for you to give birth, I asked. That would not be necessary, my lord, Tala said. She looked around where the group lay. It was a spot I had created a week ago. I had dug the land they lay on, grinding everything into fine sand and removing all debris like rocks or sharp twigs. The place was soft and easy to lie in due to the slight crater it provided. There were 3 trees that surrounded this spot, constantly providing shade throughout the day. I worked like a bird building a nest when I made this spot. But if they were not satisfied, I could do even better. Then tell me if you are hungry for anything. A buffalo rib, liver, heart, kidney, the tough meat, and the soft fats. I will get them. Amora chuckled. You are too kind, my lord. We are more than satisfied. I leaned down and rubbed my head on each and every one of the females before I moved away from them and gave them space. The rest of the pride was situated a little further away from these groups so as not to disturb them. I quickly scanned the pride before heading towards the other pregnant females. They were still not at the stage these 4 were, but they too needed to be taken care of. Third POV. For the next few days, the lionesses were in labor. It was Z and Tala who were experiencing the most severe effect of the labor. Given their condition, these 2 lionesses would give birth first. Z's and Tala's labored breaths and painful grunts were now a constant sound that rang through the pride. Amora could not count how many times she had to reassure the king that they were fine and that this was just a natural process of a female in labor. Although Amora would be the first to admit that nurturing his seeds was about the most difficult thing to do compared to the other lions. Perhaps that was because of their exceptional father. Contrary to the slow agony they were experiencing, these 4 lionesses could be said to be the happiest in the whole pride. What better joy was there for females than to nurture the cubs of the perfect male? The whole pride was quite jealous of them for being the first to give the king cubs. That act would surely put them in his favorites among the pride. Amid the pain, Amora could not help but rake her claws on the earth she lay on. Her claws easily ripped the dry earth and scooped up soft sand on her paws. No one had a clue what the king was doing when he began digging like some rodent. But he was making a nest for them to lie on. Without a doubt, Leo was the most exceptional king she had ever been under. Not only in strength but also in character, kindness, and affection. And she was cooking up the best of cubs for him. Z and Tala went into hard labor soon after. The whole ordeal lasted for a day. The 4 lionesses helped and aided each other throughout the whole thing. Tala and Ziri began their pushing hours at the exact same time. Amora had experience, so she became the unspoken leader. But even her experience could not prepare her for this type of childbirth. Ziri and Tala were exceptional females, bigger and stronger than most. But they were having a very difficult childbirth. Usually, the pushing stage lasted about an hour before the cubs were born, but for them, it lasted 3 hours. Eventually, Z gave birth to the first cub. The infant came out small, like a rodent, and in a sack. Amora and Nola helped and quickly ate the sack and cleaned the cub. Z then gave birth to 2 more cubs. This was followed by Tala's first cub. After everything was over, there were 5 baby cubs in the nest. Zuri gave birth to 3 cubs and Tala gave birth to 2. But this world was not like the Lion King cartoon, where the baby could be revealed just after birth. Instead, the babies were born almost deformed looking and completely blind to their senses. They cried and they needed to be constantly taken care of for weeks before they shaped up to look like proper cubs. The king was also there throughout the process, observing everything with visible anxiety. The lion that never trembled in front of an army of hyenas or half a dozen lion kings found himself trembling when witnessing that scene. When the cubs were cleaned of their fluids and sack, Leo bent down and gently nudged the cubs. He breathed on them, as if breathing his very life into their little bodies. After all the cubs were born, the king turned and bolted away. He ran and ran and ran to the highest elevation he could find. There, he stood proud and released the greatest roar the Serengeti had heard since his first takeover. 5 roars for 5 cubs. Their existence acknowledged and treasured deeply. The ground of the Serengeti shook. The vultures in the sky made a silent flight. The hyenas did not kill for the day and just celebrated. The Serengeti welcomed its princes and princesses. And the two females that had accomplished their job of giving birth gave a proud smile when they heard the echoes of the roar. It was a remarkable day, one that could be written in the annals of history. For on that day, when 5 roars shook the Serengeti, a legacy began. Leo's legacy.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously love it if you guys could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out so much, and it keeps me going, plus it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.